Chapter 51, Agro. Because the people of the continent didn't place great importance in developing agriculture, sometimes there would be pests cutting their crop yields, leading to a lot of starvation. However, Green also knew that the natural conditions of the Ark continent were very good, such as with the rice tree. This tree was like a bamboo, growing more than 10 meters, and would produce rice twice a year. Despite that, most of the continent's people would still go hungry. The rice that this tree produces is mostly eaten by slaves. This tree didn't have very high land requirements. There were many places on the continent where it could be grown, so it wasn't easy to have a food shortage in the continent. But Green didn't buy the rice seeds to grow these trees. Even though he was clear on the fact that the soil requirements weren't that high, it would be impossible to grow this tree on the mountain, because this tree has one important drawback: it was very sensitive to metal. A test was done in which they put a 100-pound piece of iron in a rice field. The result was that within 10 days, all the rice trees in that farmland died off. It was precisely because of this that Green didn't buy any seeds for the rice tree. Even though the dwarves have pretty much mined all the iron ore, the soil on this mountain probably has higher levels of iron than other places. Growing rice was simply nonsense, so Green chose to grow oil fruit trees instead. Their soil requirements were very low and the clan would be able to benefit from those trees for many years. Plus, they could be grown on the mountain. But, like the rice trees, the oil fruit trees also had a fatal flaw: they were vulnerable to pests. Compared to the rice trees, the oil fruits were really susceptible to pests. Although rice trees would on average experience a large-scale infestation every 5 years, the oil fruit trees would practically be affected by those pests every single year. But fortunately, they could grow almost everywhere, so they would be able to keep up the production of oil fruit. However, this disadvantage was very deadly to the Buddha clan. They needed a large amount of oil fruit trees as a major source of income. But if the trees were infested with pests, then they would be finished. This was what Green was worried about, but now that Zhao showed him the pesticide, it felt like a heavy load had vanished from his heart. Seeing Green so cheerful, Zhao said, "But I don't agree with the use of these two things. These two bottles are toxic. If we use them on the crops, there would be traces of toxins on them. Although it won't immediately poison the body, over many years of eating those crops, the toxins will accumulate, deteriorating your health." Green paused for a moment, then frowned. "This is a problem. It seems that we won't be able to eat if we use that stuff." Zhao shook his head, and decided to think about it for later. There were other problems he had to face. "Grandpa Green, let's go into my hut and see how many undead are on the screen, then find a way to catch them." Green nodded. To be honest, Green felt that the screen was very convenient. You could see outside the space to know what the situation was. The only drawback was that the range was too small. Several people in the hut looked at the screen. The number of green dots didn't seem to change, staying around a dozen. Zhao looked at the living room and saw that a green dot had appeared there. Bringing up the living room view, Zhao spotted a rat skeleton spirit beast. Looking at it, he couldn't help but freeze. He then looked up at the small 3-dimensional map on the top of the screen, and sure enough, the green dot from upstairs was gone. It seems like the rat skeleton from upstairs had gone down to the living room. Zhao wondered what was so special about the living room. Green was also tracking the rat skeleton on the screen. It seems like it senses people. Strange as it may be, the undead's ability to smell living flesh is really amazing. Hearing what Green said, Zhao understood. The smell of human flesh must have leaked out of the space hole, making the rat skeleton go into the living room. Figuring this out, Zhao felt joy because he thought of a way to catch these undead. There was a gaming term for it: aggro. In his past life, Zhao didn't play much of these games, but he still understood them from reading web novels. Zhao turned to Green. "Grandpa Green, if we just wait for the undead to come into the living room, we might not get a large amount since we'll only be catching them one at a time. Maybe we can send a person out to pull more of the undead. We'll gather a lot of them and lead them here." Zhao knew that the undead were sensitive to the living. "Yes, that's a good idea," Green said. "But Master, What if this causes even more undead spirit beasts to attack us? Don't you think that it's because of us being here that those undead are coming? Zhao thought for a moment, then his face changed. This was certainly something he was worried about. In the case that the undead felt their presence, they would overrun the castle and make it even more unsafe. Mrin shook her head. I do not think that it's because of us. Do not forget, we have been here for almost a month. If we're the reason, then those undead should have come out from the carrion swamp the moment we came to the Black Waste. Green and Zhao heard what Mrin said, and they couldn't help but feel relieved. But Green then frowned. That's strange. I remember people saying that here in the Black Waste, an outbreak of undead occurs every 10 or 20 years, and the last time was just 3 or 4 years ago. If it isn't because of us, then why did this outbreak happen so soon? If the frequency of outbreaks is this fast, then we're in trouble. You can't really believe those rumors. No one really understands how the Black Waste works, was all Mrin could say. Green nodded. Yes, I forgot that there's really nothing appealing in the Black Waste, so naturally no one actually comes here. Well, anyway, we can always hide in the space if the plan doesn't work. Green's attitude was a lot better than before. It wasn't like when he felt so desperate as if he had lost hope. In their struggle, he became very serious because it was hard to do what was best, which gave him a lot of pressure. But now that he knew about Zhao's space, Green's attitude completely changed. He looked relaxed, because he believed that as long as Zhao had the space, the Buddha clan would continue. Even if it wasn't restored to its former glory, it wouldn't be difficult to ensure the continuation of the Buddha clan. Hearing what Green said, Zhao couldn't help but chuckle. Don't worry, Grandpa Green. If we could put some of the continent's plants into the space, we can level up the space, which means we could make it larger. This will make it more helpful. Green's eyes lit up. Really, Master? Is it true that the space can become bigger? Zhao nodded. Of course. In fact, the space has already leveled up twice, giving us 4 acres. Grandma Mrin knows this since she was in the space during the second level up. Chapter 52. Right answer. Green turned to look at Mrin, and after getting a positive response from her, he had a look of excitement. That's great. As long as we can get through this crisis, we can then start sending the magic radishes to the Marquee Company. What do you want to do now, Master? Grandma Mrin, Grandpa Green, you'll go out the hole behind the hut while I monitor the undead from here. Today, we must grab as many as we can. Green and Mrin nodded, then turned and walked out, while Zhao paid attention to the undead. In the next 5 days, the slaves were practicing their reading and writing, while Zhao and the rest were catching the undead spirit beasts. In these 5 days, they used Zhao's suggestion of aggro, and they managed to catch about 1,000 undead. Once these undead entered the space, the green soul fire where their eyes were supposed to be turned red, and then Zhao threw them into his barn. Also, in this 5-day period, thanks to his 4 acres of land, he was able to harvest 8 batches of corn, while also harvesting a lot of oil fruit. Now that he had about a dozen batches of stored corn, Zhao thought that he should try planting something else. But now wasn't have the time to think about that because there were spirit beasts outside. After a lapse of 5 days, the undead spirit beasts had almost all disappeared after getting caught and converted. This allowed Green to feel at ease. He had some worry that it was because they were here that the undead spirit beasts came out of the carrion swamp. But now that the undead were gone, and no more were rushing out of the swamp, he was relieved by this good news. Once the undead spirit beasts have receded, Zhao and everyone else immediately left the space. But once they were out, all of them had a frown on their faces when they saw the horrendous destruction of the castle. Although the main building didn't suffer that much damage, all the supplies had been battered and destroyed, making the castle look more ragged. Looking at the dilapidated castle, Zhao's heart felt uncomfortable. Although the castle was plain and simple, it was still home. The screen had allowed them to see what was happening outside, but now that they were actually here, the destruction looked more intense. Blockhead couldn't resist punching a wall until blood flowed down from his fist. Contrary to that, Green was very calm. These past few days he had been out of the space doing the agrowing, so he was clear on the situation of the castle. Mrin also saw the filthy state of the castle. Well, let's gather up anything that the spirit beasts touched and get them out of the castle. I'm afraid that they could be toxic. Once we get everything out, I will use water to rinse out the castle. Green frowned. But now the moat water is green and it seems to be toxic. If we use that water to clean the castle, then it might just infect it instead. Mrin also frowned. Then she turned to Zhao. Master, should we go look at the moat? Zhao also wanted to see it. He wanted to check if his spatial water's detoxification ability could be a solution to the moat water's poison. Green apparently thought of this as well. Master, do you think you can detoxify the water in the moat? We'll go take a look first. Meg, you will arrange for everyone to throw out everything in the castle. Everyone has drunk the spatial water, so I don't think that they would be poisoned if they touch anything. Meg agreed, then organized the slaves to clean up. Accompanied by Green and Mrin, Zhao walked straight towards the moat. The three looked at the moat. It was really like Green said. The moat water indeed released a queer green light. Not only did it scare them, it also made them feel puzzled. Although the water was flowing, the green color didn't dissipate. Mrin wrinkled her brow as she looked at the moat water. The water is flowing, but evidently it still contains a lot of toxins. I think that the problem could be from the underground lake. Zhao nodded. Grandma Mrin, take out a little water. I want the space to analyze it and test how strong the toxicity of the water is. Mrin waved her hands, and a bubble of water floated up. Zhao immediately put it in his spatial farm. The spatial voice sounded in Zhao's head. Purification of toxic compounds in the contaminated water is possible. Zhao could now rest assured. Grandpa Green, Grandma Mrin, let's go to the underground lake. If we want to use the spatial water to remove the water's poison, then we better start at the source. Mrin and Green were also relieved. To be honest, they were afraid that the spatial water would have trouble removing the poison. Although they believed that flowing water would eventually take out the poison, this would require a very long period of time, which would impact their clan's development. Just as they were about to head to the mountain, Zhao suddenly stopped, standing motionless while staring at something. Mrin and Green were both puzzled, so they followed where Zhao's eyes were looking. It was just an area of black soil. Nothing unusual in the black waste. Green was confused, not knowing why Zhao was staring at it. Mrin also had some difficulty figuring out why he froze, but when she finally understood, her face suddenly went white. That area of black soil was where Zhao first did his land improvement. Now the color of that piece of land was no different from the rest of the black waste. Mrin's voice quavered. Master, could it be? Zhao nodded, his face pale. If it was really the case in which that land changed back to the original black soil, then his land improvement had failed. Green didn't understand what was wrong with the two, but looking at their faces, he knew that something bad had happened. He walked behind Zhao as they went towards that piece of land. Once Zhao stood in front of it, he squatted down and carefully looked over the land. Then he dug his hand into the ground and brought up some dirt. He breathed a long sigh of relief. It turned out that this land didn't completely change back to its originally appearance. Maybe those undead spirit beasts had just brought the black soil over and covered this piece of land so that nothing would grow. His land improvement wasn't a failure. Mrin also grabbed a handful of soil and carefully looked at it. She still made an ugly face. Green looked at the two with puzzlement, not knowing why they were closely staring at the black soil. He also crouched down and grabbed some of it with his hand. He soon discovered the improvements in this soil. Startled, he excitedly faced Zhao. Master, what is this? Zhao took a deep breath and explained. It is because of my space. Using the spatial earth and water, I was able to improve the soil in this piece of land so we could grow things here. But for some reason the spirit beasts brought this black soil from elsewhere and covered up the improved land. Before Green could say anything, Mrin spoke up. No, Master, I don't think that this black soil was brought here from elsewhere, but rather the surface of this land has been infected by the spirit beast's toxins, turning it back into black soil. If the spirit beasts really did bring the black soil here, it would definitely not be so uniform. Look around, This entire mu of land changed color. Zhao took a moment to carefully look over the land and found that what Mren said was true. The black color was very uniform. This was too unreasonable. The only explanation was that the improved land wasn't covered. It was contaminated. No one on the continent knew why the black waste had become like this. But when Zhao saw the polluted water, and now looking at this piece of land, he naturally thought that it was polluted by the spirit beasts. Unfortunately, they found the right answer. Chapter 53. It may be the truth. Zhao hit the ground. Why must our efforts go in vain? Green patted Zhao's shoulder. No, master. Rest assured, we will find a way to resolve this matter. Zhao's face still didn't look good. He touched the ground and said, no, you don't understand. Such a big piece of land. I plan to slowly improve it for farming, but now it seems that this plan would never be implemented. Zhao stood up with a look of frustration. This time the blow was really too heavy. He simply couldn't transform such a large area of land within a short amount of time. If those spirit beasts come before he completed the transformation, then all of his efforts will come to nothing. Even if he completed the transformation, and those spirit beasts appeared, that would also tantamount to him doing useless work. Green didn't know how to comfort Zhao. Obviously, after encountering such a situation, it would be hard to make his heart feel better. Zhao looked at the black waste, and sighed. He turned around and walked towards the mountain, but he didn't take 2 steps before he stopped, and muttered, no, this seems right. Just when Mren and Green were about to follow Zhao, Green was puzzled when he stopped. Master, what's wrong? Zhao pointed at the mountain. Grandpa Green, what do you see in that mountain? Green looked at the mountain, and frowned. I only see weeds. Ah, wait, how can there be weeds on the mountain when the spirit beasts make black soil with their toxins? How could the soil on the mountain be unaffected? Mrin also reflected over this question. She looked puzzled thinking about how the spirit beasts trampled over the weeds, but after a few days of recovery, they would just crop up again. They were really tough with a tenacious vitality. Seeing the weeds with restored vitality, Zhao felt that something was wrong. If the black waste was really contaminated by the touch of those spirit beasts, then it should be impossible for anything to grow on the mountain. Looking at the patch of black land, Zhao murmured, no, but if it isn't because of being touched by the toxins on the spirit beasts, then what is it? Green and Mrin also turned to look at the black land, seeing how far it stretched to the end. Originally, Mrin felt that her answer was right, but now that she saw those mountain weeds, she knew that it was the wrong answer. Zhao walked in a circle, trying to figure out why the land had become like this, and thoughtlessly he ended up at the edge of the moat, where he unconsciously stopped, seeing the green moat while in a daze. Mrin and Green saw Zhao standing motionless by the moat, and were a little nervous wondering what was happening to Zhao. Zhao then forcefully clapped his hands. I think I got it, Master. What are you thinking about? Green was surprised. Zhao pointed to the moat. The water is flowing, but it is still green. That is to say, the underground lake where the water comes from must have been contaminated by the spirit beasts. But why should those spirit beasts go there? There's nothing to eat there. So I think that the purpose the spirit beasts go to the lake is to most likely take a bath. A bath? Green and Mren couldn't help but say. They both gave Zhao strange looks, thinking that he was frantic. Master must be distraught, Mrin quickly said. Zhao turned around and looked at Mrin. What? Grandma Mrin doesn't believe what I said? Master, those spirit beasts came from the carrion swamp. It's a marshy place where there's no scarcity of water. Why would they come here to take a bath? Zhao snapped his fingers. This is the problem. Although the carrion swamp does have water, that water is toxic. Like you said before, the air over there is toxic. So how could the water not be toxic? They wouldn't use that water for bathing. I think that they must be looking for some clean water to bathe in. Hearing what Zhao said, Green and Mren had never really thought about it. Zhao looked at the two. The reason that this land has become black is most likely related to those spirit beasts. Those creatures came from the carrion swamp, where everything, including the air and the water, is toxic. Maybe even the poison is too much for those spirit beasts to stand. So they will most likely go to the black waste. Here, and try to flush out the excess toxins from their bodies. This will slowly make the black waste reach its current state. What Zhao said made more and more sense to Green and Mren, but Green frowned. But even if we can detoxify, when the spirit beasts come out of the carrion swamp with a high frequency, wouldn't we still be in trouble? Hearing what Green said, Zhao's look of excitement disappeared. He remembered that even if he found out a possible truth, he still didn't find a solution yet. Zhao took a deep breath and looked at the black waste. We can't keep worrying about it since it's already happened. If there is a solution, we'll think about it eventually. That being said, he walked towards the mountain. Green and Mren took one last look at the black waste with a sigh. Before they followed behind Zhao, they were afraid that there could be spirit beasts lingering around the underground lake, so it would be dangerous for Zhao. The three made it to the entrance to the mines. Before Zhao could walk in, Mren pulled him aside. "Master, let Green have a look first." Zhao reluctantly stopped, but soon Green's voice could be heard coming from inside. "Master, Mren, come in. There are no spirit beasts here." Zhao and Mren went into the mines, and eventually made it to the underground lake where Green was standing, looking at the lake in a daze. Mren immediately used a lighting spell. Now the three could clearly see the situation of the lake. The lake was green. It was a deeper green than the moat. Zhao sighed. "With such a good lake, I hate it when you guys take a bath in it." With these words, he opened up a hole, and the spatial water poured into the lake. But Zhao didn't think that the moment the spatial water entered the lake, it would induce something like a chemical reaction. From the point of contact, the detoxification effect moved with a fast speed towards the center of the lake, and then beyond where Zhao could see. Zhao was stunned. Although they suspected that the space could solve the water's poison, wasn't his too quick? From where the water flowed out of this lake, would it also react as fast? Zhao was still uncertain. "I don't know if the water still contains toxins. Grandma Mren, could you look and see?" Since Mren was a powerful water mage, this kind of thing was within her abilities. Mren nodded. She reached towards the lake and whispered a spell. A group of blue light emitted from her hand, like a sky full of stars, then they disappeared into the lake. Eventually, the blue lights were brought together in Mren's hands. Then they slowly disappeared. Mren opened her eyes with a look of shock. "That's amazing. All the toxins had disappeared. There's nothing left." Zhao at once said, "Let's go back to the castle and see." The trio immediately walked out of the mines. As soon as they were out of the entrance, they could see smoke rising from the castle. Evidently, Meg was doing her job. Once they made it to the castle, they saw Meg was setting some of the garbage, which they threw out of the castle, on fire. After seeing that, Zhao quickly walked to the moat, and sure enough, the water was clear. All the green had completely disappeared. But Zhao still wasn't reassured. He told Mren to float up a water bubble, and then he brought into his space to see if it was still poisonous. The voice came, and it told him that the water has been completely cleared of toxic compounds. After waiting until after Meg threw out all of the garbage, Mren magically used the water to clean the castle. Once it was done, the castle was finally livable again. Chapter 54, A Seedling. Although the castle was clean again, it wasn't wet, mainly thanks to Mren's control over water. She was an 8th level water mage. Her control was perfect. The water only washed away the dirt until the castle was practically shining, and then there was nothing left but a little water vapor after she was done. After Mren cleaned the castle, Zhao immediately took the supplies back out from his space, along with some corn stalks for the kitchen and the slaves. After all, they needed this stuff to live. Once those things were taken out, Zhao left Meg to finish cleaning the castle, while he took Mren to go check out the valley. He wanted to see if the valley also became the same as the rest of the Black Waste. Green also wanted to look at the valley with Zhao. If it hadn't been contaminated, it would be considered a good source for growing food. Mren used her water spells to bring them over the lake and straight towards the valley. Zhao's heart was disturbed. He feared that the valley would be no different than the rest of the Black Waste. Once they made it to the valley, Zhao was silent. It was as he expected. The land in the valley he had improved returned to its original look. But as he was looking at the valley, he discovered a problem. There were no footprints. There was no indication that anything had been on this land. If the spirit beasts hasn't been here, then how could the land become like this? Zhao was puzzled. Next to him, Green sighed. If there are no footprints, then it seems that those flying spirit beasts were here, spreading their poison. Hearing what Green said, Zhao looked up towards the mountain and saw a few black spots here and there. It really seemed like Green was right, that it was because of the toxins from the flying spirit beasts. Zhao felt depressed. Not only did they have to deal with spirit beasts on the ground, they also had to deal with the ones flying in the sky. Just then, while searching the ground, Mrin suddenly shouted, "Ah, Master, come look." Zhao and Green didn't know what Mrin was so excited about, so they rushed over and were shocked at what she showed them. In front of them was a seedling, a tiny corn seedling. In front of their eyes was a small seedling. But do not forget that this land had been turned into black earth, so seeing it grow, wasn't it strange? Looking at these seedlings, Zhao was puzzled. How could it grow when the land has become like this? Mrin and Green didn't know how to answer him. They too didn't understand why. Zhao clawed at the ground around the seedling, and found that even if the surface had turned into black soil, the roots of the seedling were being nurtured by the fertile earth. The roots were very sturdy, allowing it to grow. Looking at these seedlings, Zhao was reminded of something from his past life. When he saw corn seeds in rural areas, he was shocked to discover that those corn seeds were pink, and not the golden color that he was expecting. Thinking that it was strange, he questioned the people about it, and they laughed because, of course, corn seeds weren't actually pink. The reason that they were that color was because they were treated corn seeds. In the north, because of the climate and the worms, it was difficult to grow corn, so they needed to treat the corn seeds with pesticides to help them sprout and survive until they grew into seedlings. Growing in such a difficult environment reminded Zhao of this situation. Of course, he wasn't thinking of using pesticides and killing insects. He was thinking about dousing these seedlings with spatial water to help them grow. He wanted to see if corn could grow without land improvement, because now the spatial water had detoxification abilities. Green and Mrin were standing there motionless while looking at the seedlings. They were very surprised, thinking that they would see a catastrophe with all the planted corn being destroyed. Never did they expect that the corn seeds would survive. Zhao patted the earth and stood up. "Grandpa Green, Grandma Mrin, after we go back and settle things, we can use the spatial water on these tiny seedlings. Since the spatial water can detoxify, maybe it can also improve the land. The success rate might be low, but if it is successful, we can do it many times in one day." Mrin was surprised. "Master, didn't you say that you could only improve 1 mu of land per day?" "Certainly, the space has specified that we couldn't do so much land improvement, but it never said anything about just using the spatial water. We'll need some more land to test, and I have a lot of corn in my barn that we could use as corn seeds. Let's try it to see whether we could do it or not." Before Mrin could speak, Green nodded his head and said, "Master, this is a good idea, but will we run out of spatial water?" Zhao chuckled. That shouldn't be the case. When so many of us were living inside the space, we were drinking water every day. The amount of water everyone drank per day was certainly not a small amount, yet did you see if there was less spatial water? There really wasn't any decrease, Green recalled. "This is really great, Master, but I still think we should first go send the radishes to the marquee company. Then we could start growing oil fruit seeds and alfalfa seeds on the mountain. Once we douse it with spatial water, we can slowly change the mountain land to shorten the growth period of the oil fruit trees. Once we have a good harvest, then we can have a fixed income." Zhao nodded. "Yes, we should do that. But I'm a bit worried that when we go deliver the radishes, what would happen to the people in the castle when we leave? If those spirit beasts attacks, they will be unable to resist." Green laughed. "Master, what are you worrying about? We can just take everyone with us inside the space." Zhao thought for a moment, and then smiled. He forgot about that. With his space, he could simply take everybody with him. After all, protecting everyone was the most important. "This is a good idea," Mrin nodded. "Also, We shouldn't disguise how damaged the castle looks. The people in the continent already knows about the disaster with the spirit beasts invading the Black Waste, so if they send someone to come see, it would be like we were playing dead. Perhaps in the future, we wouldn't need to worry about those guys. I fear that it may not be that easy since you've just cleaned up the castle, Green said. If someone were to look at it, then I'm afraid that we won't be able to hide it for too long. Once we head out, we can only stay away for a short time, so the only thing we should do is sell the radishes. Marin gave a wry smile. She never really thought that it would be a mistake to clean too fast. Well, then we should go as soon as possible, and not be found out by those guys, Zhao said. Then master, we should go back and start at once. There are a lot of things that have to be done. Chapter 55, Black Mage. When Zhao returned to the castle, he told Meg to make the necessary preparation. In 2 days, they were going to go to the Persal Duchy with everybody. In fact, this preparation was very simple. They could just put everything they needed into the space. The slaves had already been in the space before, so they were ready and willing to go in when they were informed. 2 days later, everyone went into the space. However, Zhao didn't go in. He was staying outside with Green. Green, if he was traveling by himself, could go really fast. But since Zhao was going with him this time, they would naturally move more slowly. Fortunately, Zhao took out one of the undead from the space, and now he and Green were on their way, riding on Alien. Although Green was fast, he would still become tired, while an undead could keep on going like a perpetual motion machine. It should be said that the Black Waste was really huge. Their speed was not slow, and they have been moving day and night, but it would take them 3 more days before they could see the outer perimeter of the Black Waste. Fortunately, Alien was large enough for Zhao to simply cover its back with planks of wood to make a bed, like turning the undead into a car. Right now they were going down a road paved with slabs of stone, and although it had become weathered, it was still flat, which showed off the dwarves' superb craftsmanship. This road was used by the dwarves to move a large number of iron ore, along with a wide variety of iron products, to be sold to the whole continent. But since all the iron ore were mined, and no more adventurers had tried to conquer the Carrion Swamp, no one uses this road anymore. If not for the fact that grass didn't grow here, there would simply be no road at all. 3 days later, Zhao finally saw the outer perimeter of the Black Waste. In the distance, he could see something green, which made his spirit rise. Green was also relieved. To be honest, he would like a change of scenery. Seeing the endless black soil was a kind of a torture. Throughout their journey, he and Zhao had been talking less and less, especially in the last half day, when they didn't even say a word to each other. The two just sat there, looking at the endless black soil, like their souls had been sucked out. Then imagine what would happen when their eyes suddenly spotted something green. Even if it was just a little bit, it had a huge impact. Zhao shouted, like he wanted to run off. Green chuckled. Master, this is the outer perimeter. Over there is the Persal Duchy. If we go any further, we will be leaving the Buddha clan's territory. From what Green said, Zhao nodded and turned around to look at all that black land. The land was his, but it didn't bring him a happy mood. Seeing the endless land that couldn't be planted made it look like his ideas weren't feasible. Slowly, they saw more and more patches of green. Zhao then spotted mountains that were bigger, and with a lot more trees, than the Iron Mountain near his castle. He was shocked when he saw these steep mountains, which made the Iron Mountain look gentle. Green noted the look on Zhao's face, and smiled. I guess Master didn't expect that the mountains here would be so high and steep. Zhao nodded, then Green continued. In fact, this is not surprising. Even if it's not the highest place, it is definitely not the shortest. Comparatively speaking, they are higher than the one near our castle. They then saw a valley, hundreds of meters wide, in the distance. It was the only way out of the Black Waste. As long as they go through there, they would enter the territory of the Persal Duchy. Green pointed to the valley. That place was once called the Iron Stream Valley. All the iron flows out through there. But ever since there was no more iron coming out, people slowly forgot about the name of this place, and it eventually became known as the Forgotten Valley. In the Forgotten Valley, There's a fortress called Montenegro. It was designed to prevent any massive outbreaks of spirit beasts from going through the Forgotten Valley and into the Persal Duchy. Strange to say, those spirit beasts had never come out of the Black Waste, so the fortress slowly turned into a paradise for adventurers. They were risk-takers, and although the carrion swamp was too risky, they could still hunt spirit beasts around here. Zhao nodded. Then how do we get past it without getting found out? Green smiled slightly. Master doesn't need to worry. Later, we will go straight into the mountains of Forgotten Valley, and then I will go into Montenegro and buy some clothing for you. Since you can use these undead, you'll have to dress like a black mage. Black mages were actually general terms for those who learned dark magic, poison magic, blood magic, and other attributes that were related to darkness. But even if this world was repulsed by black mages, it still respected power. As long as you had strength, regardless of what abilities, you will be accepted. The black mages were people that no one wanted to provoke, probably because they might have learned that type of magic for a very dark reason, and their characters were somewhat gloomy. If you mess with them, they might not attack you on the spot, but they will definitely make you pay one day. If you were asked who had the highest position in this world, some might answer that it was the nobles or the royalty, but it was undeniable that the status of mages was certainly not low. A powerful mage will find courtesy in any empire. There might have no longer been a Buddha clan if they didn't have a powerful mage such as Mran. However, even if no one wished to offend a black mage, no one wanted to welcome them. Most people did not wish to get into contact with a black mage. Green wanted to make Zhao look like a black mage as an added protection, since they would stop people from finding out Zhao's identity. Zhao's understanding of this world was too small, so he didn't argue with Green, and just nodded his head. You arrange it, Grandpa Green. I've rarely walked outside, so I don't know what to do. I'll listen to you. Green nodded. What they were doing was related to the survival of the Buddha clan. No one could find out their identity while they were selling the radishes, otherwise the Buddha clan would be in big trouble. The Buddha clan was hated by the Xia Empire, who would deliver a merciless blow if they found out about this transaction. It was precisely because of this that Green had to be more careful. Even if he didn't know that Adam was replaced by Zhao, he would do everything he can to not let Zhao be killed. Since Zhao was going to rule the entire Buddha clan, Green wanted him to better understand the world. Green was actually paving the way for Zhao. He knew that his master was young, but he still hoped that he would grow up. The day that Zhao would become a person that could support the Buddha clan, he will be able to feel at ease. Chapter 56, Not Saying Hello. They quickly went into Forgotten Valley. Zhao didn't put away his undead yet, so as to keep up his identity as a black mage, because if they headed to the fortress, no one would bother them when they see a black mage with a summoned undead. The sides of the valley weren't steep cliffs, but two gentle slopes, which contained shrubs and weeds, and also trees that were much stronger and more vibrant than the ones near his castle. They didn't see anyone in Forgotten Valley, but occasionally they could hear the sound of insects, giving everything a harmonious nature. After looking at the hills on both sides, Green turned to Zhao. Master, once we find a good place to settle on the mountain, you will immediately go into the space, while I go into Montenegro to buy clothes and stuff. Zhao nodded, and commanded the undead to climb the hill. Although it was just a skeleton, it still had sharp claws, so climbing a mountain wasn't strenuous. Once he was closer to the trees, he could see that they were similar to the ones on Earth. He didn't know much about trees, except for common species like poplar, willow, elm, and pine. He didn't recognize the other trees. Green, while sitting next to Zhao, was also watching the trees. Master, the woods are very dangerous. Not only because of spirit beasts, but there are plants that are highly toxic, so be careful. Zhao nodded. Although he had never been in a forest before, he had read about dangerous scenarios that people had written online. Even in fiction, the forest would be depicted as a dangerous place. And since there were spirit beasts here, he had to be even more careful. There was a lot of vegetation on the mountain. You could see a variety of trees everywhere, to the point where the light would get dim when you walked through the woods. It took them a while, But they were finally able to find a secluded place. They jumped off of Alien, and then Zhao and Green followed it into the space. Inside the space, the corn were growing strong, the oil fruit trees were healthy, and Mrin was teaching the slaves to read and write. But besides just reading and writing like last time, Zhao had brought the mind stones with him so Anne and some slaves could try to make a millstone. Also, he had brought a lot of weeds into the space as well, to give the other slaves something to do. Moreover, the effect was surprisingly good. There were simply no problems for the slaves since they could now work, as well as rest. Mrin saw the two come in, so she quickly greeted them and said, "Master, Green, how come you're here? Did anything happen?" "Nothing happened," Green said. "We just finally made it to Forgotten Valley. Let the young master stay in the space for a few days, while I go out there to get some clothes from Montenegro." Mrin understood what Green was doing. "Well, make haste. We'll be here waiting for you to return, and remember our position so you can find your way back." Mrin was in a good mood these days. The Buddha clan was about to receive an income for the first time since they were exiled. Although they haven't received the money yet, it still represented hope. Zhao turned to Green. "Be careful, Grandpa Green. Our identity cannot be exposed, otherwise we will suffer. Remember that selling the radishes now doesn't matter. We can just wait for some other time if you run into trouble. Your safety is the most important." A hint of a warm smile appeared on Green's face. He patted Zhao's shoulder. "Master doesn't need to worry. My bones may be old, but I can't bear to die before seeing the revival of the Buddha clan." He finished his words with a laugh. Before, Green would have never acted so friendly with Zhao, because he wasn't close to Adam. Green thought that Adam was very annoying, so how could he be so friendly towards him? But now Adam's body was filled with Zhao's soul. Zhao was an otaku, an orphan, and he was born in China, which respected the elderly. Although Green and Mrin were his servants, ever since he woke up, they have been taking care of him, which resulted in a strong bond with his beloved elders. This change in Zhao was felt by Mrin and Green. It was because of this change that Green could be so friendly with Zhao. Otherwise it would have been impossible to get along with him. Zhao let Green pat his shoulder, just feeling the elder's love, but he didn't say anything because he was very subtle and didn't like to put on an excessive show of feelings. He simply nodded and said, "Grandpa Green, I'll send you out." With a thought, Green left the space. Green memorized his surroundings and left a mark, then he rushed towards Montenegro. Green looked like an old traveler, so he didn't face any scruples when he encountered some adventurers. Those ordinary adventurers didn't pay attention to the Buddha clan. After all, the great nobles didn't seem to see the Buddha clan as a threat, so they didn't hire out any of these risk-takers to deal with such a declining clan. Plus, they also didn't want to anger Green and Mrin, who were strong characters. The real threat to the Buddha clan was none other than the Persal clan. The previous relationship with the two clans was good, even preparing their children for marriage, but since the fall of the Buddha clan, the Persal clan never mentioned the marriage again. Aristocratic marriages weren't about love. The Persal clan was only interested in the marriage with the Buddha clan to gain some benefits. But now that the Buddha clan was down, the Persal clan deemed that there was no value in honoring the marriage agreement. However, they still needed to save face. Even though the Buddha clan was now weak, if the Persal clan dissolved the marriage that was their idea in the first place, then their clan would damage their reputation among the aristocratic circles. The Persal clan wouldn't do such an idiotic thing. There were only two ways to get rid of the marriage agreement. The first way was for the Buddha clan to initiate the dissolution of the marriage. Everyone knows that the Persal clan was the one to offer the marriage, but if the Buddha clan was the one to give it up, then the Persal clan could possibly save face. The other way was even simpler. Kill Adam Buddha, and let the Buddha clan die. Obviously, there wouldn't be a marriage after that. In fact, Green had thought of releasing the marriage from the Persal clan, but at the time, Zhao hadn't woken up yet. But when the Buddha clan needed help the most, the Persal clan chose not to aid them, even though they had the power to do so. It was precisely because of this that Green felt some resentment towards the Persal clan, so he decided not to dissolve Zhao's marriage, just because the Persal clan didn't help them, and let them fall to this point without even greeting them with a hello. Green understood a noble's problems with saving face, so he will not take the initiative to dissolve the marriage with the Purcell clan, even if they were to pressure his Buddha clan. Still, Green had to be very careful, because the only way out of the Black Waste was the entrance to the Purcell duchy. Since they were a thorn to the Purcell clan, the Purcell clan would obviously pay attention to their movements, so he had to be careful. Chapter 57, Montenegro Fortress. Standing quietly at the exit of Forgotten Valley was a fortress. The fortress was made of black stone, with walls reaching an appalling height of 40 meters, and a length that completely blocked the valley. The whole fortress was like an iron wall. If you want to get past the valley, you will have to go through Montenegro. But when you actually get closer to Montenegro Fortress, you realize that it's not actually as mighty as you imagined. In fact, with its damaged walls, the entire fortress looked shabby, as if it had not been repaired in a long time. This was true. The Purcell clan had built this fortress to prevent any carrion swamp spirit beasts from going through the Forgotten Valley and into the Purcell duchy. But although the fortress has been established for hundreds of years, there have just been no activities of spirit beasts charging in from the Black Waste, which made this fortress become neglected. Although there were some troops here, they were more for protecting the peace and order of this place. But even if Montenegro Fortress had no garrison, no one dared to underestimate the fighting strength here, because there were numerous adventurers and mercenaries. However, with the existence of these people, the security of Montenegro Fortress became confusing. The city defense officials had to deal with adventurers, mercenaries, and even some rebellious guys that would even try to injure a child with knives. In the face of such a group of barbarians, the official defense forces were too weak. Because of this, the defense forces of Montenegro finally evolved into several large mercenary groups and local merchants having their own site, and deciding not to infringe on each other, which resulted in a peaceful coexistence. Of course, in this case, the Purcell duchy can't even think of receiving any taxes, and because of this non-collection of taxes, the duchy doesn't give them any money to repair the walls, so slowly Montenegro became a paradise for mercenaries, adventurers, and even fugitives. This was also a side effect from the situation in the Black Waste. Since that wasteland was a place of death, Montenegro Fortress became one of the safest towns from outside forces, because it was surrounded by mountains and no enemies. Such a place should have been an important border town, but because there was no trade and the Purcell duchy couldn't collect taxes, this place was forgotten. For Green, Montenegro was an undefended fortress. Of course, he wouldn't just go swaggering into the main entrance, but he could easily sneak over the walls. Montenegro had a very abnormal commercial development. Weapon stores, drug stores, and equipment consultations were everywhere, but pubs, hotels, restaurants, and a place to buy consumer goods were difficult to find. The whole fortress was full of adventurers and mercenaries, so the number of ordinary people was very small. This wasn't a concern for Green. He found a remote equipment store and bought 5 black magic robes, along with a hat and a wooden staff. He also bought for himself a very beautiful suit of armor. Although it wasn't as good as most decent armors, it still had the most important part he needed, a helmet that could hide Green's entire face. Naturally, the magic robes were for Zhao. With these robes and staff, Zhao could dress up as a black mage. After all, it wasn't odd for black mages to wear something that wrapped up their whole body. You should know that magic robes have been improved over many generations in this continent. They were particularly more comfortable to wear, but also more beautiful, especially the ones worn by female mages, to the point that the gorgeous robes looked like a dress. Compared to the ones generally worn by mages, Green bought a black mage robe that was very thick, along with a large hat that could entirely block someone's face. As for Green's set of armor that would cover his face, he wanted to dress as a follower of a mage. Mages were high-status people, and under normal circumstances they wouldn't be short on money. Although mages weren't afraid of melee combat, they would still have followers with them, and make those followers fight and help them in battle. Therefore, On the continent, if you see a mage around, it wasn't strange to see them with a bunch of followers. This time, Green was going to dress up as a warrior that was following a mage, which was the only way to stand by Zhao's side without being suspected. After buying these things, Green then bought some mercenary items, including a backpack. Backpacks were the standard equipment for mercenaries and adventurers. Because they would often go out into the field, they would prepare a lot of stuff that corresponded to their different tasks, such as food, gathering loot, finding a place to make camp, and a lot of other things. This was how a mercenary backpack came into being. Green mainly bought these things to not let people discover the secret of Zhao's space. He wasn't worried about passing through Montenegro, since this was a place where people simply didn't care about anything other than themselves, and the Persal clan didn't flaunt their power here. However, getting into other places might not be as smooth. With the exception of Montenegro, the Persal clan had very good control of their territory. Green would like to buy more things, but he didn't have the money on hand. Although he got the orders for the radishes, do not forget that he hasn't actually sold them yet, so he could only buy some essentials. Without wearing the shiny silver armor that blatantly hid his face, Green looked like an ordinary adventurer, which made him blend in perfectly. There were hundreds of those risk-takers here, so no one paid attention to him. Still, he had to be careful to not be observed when walking into the mountains. He walked in a roundabout way until he was sure that no one was following him. Then he went to the place where he made the mark. Suddenly, the space hole appeared. After Green stepped into the space, the hole disappeared. Everything was quiet. Zhao had been paying attention to what was happening outside the space. Do not forget that he could see in a range up to 100 meters, so he was able to find Green when he returned. Seeing Green holding a big backpack, Zhao froze for a moment, because this backpack looked a lot like those mountaineering bags back on Earth. Even though it wasn't made of the same materials, the quality wasn't as fine, and there were no zippers. It still looked like a mountaineering bag. Zhao was puzzled as he pointed at the backpack. "Grandpa Green, why did you buy this thing?" Green smiled. "Well, we don't actually need it, but this thing could mask the presence of the space as we're traveling around." Zhao immediately understood what Green meant, and nodded his head. "Yes, I didn't think of that." Green then took out a magic staff and handed it to Zhao. "This is something for a mage. I chose this one because of how light it is, so Master doesn't need a lot of strength to wield it. And in this backpack are the robes that Master should put on." Zhao held the staff and the backpack. He didn't know what kind of wood this staff was made of, but it was as light as bamboo. However, he didn't continue to study the magic staff as he took the backpack into the hut. In the beginning, Zhao had been wearing aristocratic clothes that had been prepared for him, but although they were beautiful, they were still very inconvenient. For example, the lower half was like the Western medieval tights back on Earth, which really affected his range of movements. Mrin knew this, so she hadn't objected when Zhao started wearing the clothes of a warrior, much like Green's. Naturally, they were very loose and convenient, and easy to move around in. Now it was time to put on the black robe. Chapter 58, Sly Smile. Zhao silently looked at the black robe in his hands. He didn't know what it was made of, but it was very thick, with good craftsmanship. However, what he most noted was that the style of the robe looked like something a villain from a TV show would wear. As for the hat that he was carrying, it was a big hat. The most important thing about it was that it would cover his face so people couldn't see his appearance. All of this was perfect for disguising himself as a black mage. Zhao wore the robe over his warrior clothes. The black robe was very large and thick, not to mention he didn't feel cold after wearing it, and the cloth of the robe was quite soft, so it was comfortable to wear. He couldn't help but nod with satisfaction. Once he put on his hat, he then picked up his magic staff and walked out of the hut. When Green saw Zhao coming out of the door, he discovered that the robe really suited Zhao. Wearing it really did make Zhao look like a black mage. That was because Zhao had a peculiar temperament that made him seem out of tune with the world. If you didn't pay attention to him, you wouldn't feel his presence, as if he was an invisible man. In fact, Zhao's temperament was simply because he was an otaku from his past life. Otakus generally were less likely to communicate with other people, and naturally they were very good at hiding their presence. They would always put themselves in a place where people didn't pay attention so that no one would notice them, and then they would sit there, watching the world. In his past life, Zhao had such an experience. One time, he went out with his work friends. They went out to dinner and then to a hotel. But it was only when they went up to their rooms that everyone finally noticed him. "You were invited?" they all asked, surprised. Being asked that by his friends, Zhao didn't know what to do, because even though he had accompanied them, they completely forgot about him. It was like being a pebble on the road. It was precisely because of this temperament that made the black robe look appropriate on Zhao. It seemed like he was out of tune with the world, so you could easily ignore his presence, which was right for a black mage. Everyone was looking at Zhao, while Green couldn't help but be surprised as he picked up the hat. "How very strange," Green said. Zhao took the hat back from Green, and then wore it again. His body temperament suddenly changed, as if he was about to disappear. This change, if you didn't personally see it, you wouldn't believe it. But everyone was happy about this. If Zhao wore the robe, he would look like a black mage. If he took it off, no one would think that he and the black mage were one and the same person. This was very convenient in hiding Zhao's identity. Green shook his head. "I never would have thought that such clothes would be so suitable for the young master. Meg will also dress up too. She will follow you as a maid. If you go out, she can protect you, and no one would suspect anything when a maid follows a black mage." Zhao looked at Meg. To be honest, although he wanted to see that side of her, his heart felt uncomfortable, so he was a little afraid to face Meg. Green then added, "Originally, I wanted Blockhead and Rockhead to follow you, but if those two fools worked together, then they would probably stand out too much and arouse suspicion." Zhao didn't really think so, but since Green didn't want Blockhead and Rockhead to follow them outside, he had to give up. Just then, Meg suddenly spoke up. "Master, do you not want me to go with you?" Zhao was surprised as he turned around to look at Meg. He found that her eyes looked tearful, delicate, and charming to the point that would make people speechless. "No, that's not it," Zhao quickly said. "You can follow me." He then turned around again, afraid to look at Meg. When he turned his head back, he saw that she had a sly smile on her face. Meg discovered that Zhao seemed to be a little afraid of her. Under normal circumstances, she would have not gone along with him, but now she wanted to see if Zhao cared about her. Turns out that he did care. Men thought that girls would never understand if a guy cares about her or not, but just one look told her that Zhao did. Meg couldn't help but laugh when Zhao seemed to be afraid of her. Now she felt like teasing Zhao, but since Green and Mren were standing next to her, she wouldn't. Green couldn't help but stare at Meg, who lowered her head and then turned and ran off. "I have to go pack up some things," she said. Mren and Green didn't object when they realized that Meg was interested in Zhao. If it was in the past, they wouldn't have let Zhao get close to Meg, but now they didn't oppose it. Green then turned to Zhao. "Master, you had better put up the screen so that Mren could keep an eye outside, so that Mren could be on alert for us, even if we were resting. If I were to leave, and if Meg wasn't at your side, you could always ask Mren to help you." Zhao thought there was no need for that, but he agreed nonetheless. However, he felt uncomfortable about it. If he allowed Mren to use the screen, she would have to watch them 24 hours a day, and he really felt bad about that. However, he still did it. Since they were outside the Black Waste, they needed the extra insurance. Even though he had Adam's memories, from birth to now, Adam has never left the capital of the Ixu Empire, so he didn't know much about the outside world. In this case, Zhao didn't know anything about the situation out there, so he had to do things according to Green's advice. Later, he put the screen up for Mren. Meg was also finished packing, holding a bag while dressed as a maid. It must be said that Meg looked really beautiful in a maid outfit. She looked so gentle that people couldn't help but feel a desire to protect her. After trying not to stare at Meg, Zhao turned to Mren and said, "Grandma Mren, if there's anything you need, you can just knock on the screen. I'll be listening." Mren nodded. "Master, You can rest assured, but you also have to be careful." Zhao also nodded his head. Then with a thought, Zhao, Green, and Meg appeared in the woods. Green took a look around, and then he said to Zhao, "Master, call out your undead. Then we will head off to Montenegro Fortress." Green smiled. "If it was any other city, when we have a summoned undead, people would think that we were attacking the city. But here is Montenegro. There's no reason to attack it. If we get past the city while sitting on an undead, it would reduce a lot of trouble because no one would bother us." Zhao was puzzled. "But I'm wearing the robe of a black mage. Isn't that enough to stop them from bothering us? That place isn't the same as other cities. It doesn't have that many mages. So many people would try to impersonate a black mage. Everyone in the continent knows that black mages aren't to be trifled with, so oftentimes someone would pose as a black mage to commit a robbery and extort things off of adventurers. If we don't take out an undead, people may not think that you're really a black mage." Chapter 59, Mercenaries and Adventurers. Zhao really didn't know there were people in this world that would impersonate black mages. He didn't think that someone in Montenegro would dare to pose as one. It was a strange place. Green apparently saw Zhao's puzzled look, and he smiled. "There's nothing to be surprised about. Those audacious mercenaries and adventurers in this paradise have nothing that they wouldn't dare to do." Zhao nodded. "Well, I'll listen to you. Let's go," he said as he summoned his undead. Green put on the shiny body armor, even though he didn't actually need it for protection. As powerful a warrior as Green was, if he was someone that needed to rely on something to protect his own safety, he would have already lost the battle. Meg, in her maid outfit, sat quietly on Alien, next to Zhao. She had seen Zhao sit on Alien before, but she had never personally got on herself. So she was curious about what it was like. She soon discovered that sitting on the undead was not very comfortable. Although there were planks covered with blankets to sit on, it still felt hard and there wasn't that much room. Even though the undead reached a staggering 10 meters long, most of it was from its tail, which measured about 5 meters, half the size of its entire body. Plus with a 2-meter-long head, the main part of its body was a mere 3 meters. Green wasn't sitting with the two because he was on Alien's skull, and although the skull was a small area, with his skill, Green could stand or sit and even sleep with no problems. Alien naturally couldn't feel anything, so it didn't mind that someone was riding on its head. The three slowly left the woods and were back in Forgotten Valley. They still didn't see any people yet, but Zhao didn't care as he directed the undead to walk straight towards Montenegro. It wasn't very far, only taking about half an hour before they saw the distant walls and people by the gates. Zhao commanded the undead to keep going because of what Green told him. If they sat on Alien as they entered Montenegro Fortress, no one would dare to offend them. No one in this continent wanted to mess with black mages. While sitting on the undead's back, they swaggered towards Montenegro Fortress, and within 5 minutes, they ran into a group of mercenaries that was made up of 5 people. Each person, while carrying a backpack, was surprised as they looked with uncertainty at Zhao. When they saw the huge undead, they immediately stepped aside to the side of the road. It was as Green said. These people wouldn't dare to touch a black mage, especially one that could summon such a powerful undead. It seemed like Zhao's head didn't move, but his eyes were looking over the mercenaries. They were wearing simple leather armor, each armed with weapons, and carrying a backpack. The guy in front was carrying a bow, a knife on his waist, and he had a body that was very thin, with long hands and feet. He seemed like a very agile guy. The second guy was holding a double-edged axe, and with a single glance you could tell that its weight wasn't light. Underneath his relatively thick leather armor, he looked like a powerful warrior with dark skin wrapping around iron-like muscles. The third guy was dressed like an orthodox adventurer. He wore a leather helmet and thick boots along with his armor, while a cloak swayed from behind him. Plus he was carrying a large sword. The 2 people following behind that guy seemed to be brothers, who looked alike, but were not twins. They were very fat. One of them was stuffing his mouth with chicken feet, like he hasn't eaten in the past few days. Although Zhao was watching them, with the large hat hiding his face, It looked like his head didn't move. Those 5 people thought that Zhao's eyes were focused straight towards the front, so they didn't notice him looking at them. There were often people who posed as black mages in Montenegro Fortress, but to see such an undead, nobody suspected that Zhao was a fake. It would be impossible for a fake black mage to summon an undead spirit beast. Soon Alien left those 5 people behind, and Zhao turned his eyes back towards the front. To be honest, this was the first time he saw actual mercenaries, so he was very curious. But even if Zhao got a first impression from those 5 individuals' characteristics, he still couldn't tell how strong they were. Just then, Green spoke up. "Master, those 5 people coming out of Montenegro Fortress is part of a famous mercenary group called Kuisnake. The strength of those 5 are good, with the axe guy and sword guy already at the peak of a 6th level warrior." Zhao was surprised. He thought that those people were so powerful. Peak of a 6th level warrior? So they were stronger than Blockhead and Rockhead. It seems like there were a lot of experts in this world. Along the way, the 3 encountered a lot of adventurers and mercenaries. Some were dressed in leather armor similar to those previous 5, while others were more mixed. Some of the adventurers didn't even wear leather armor, and instead just wore plain warrior clothes. A few didn't even have backpacks. After these mercenaries and adventurers saw Zhao, they invariably got out of the way. Even if their strength was good, they weren't willing to get into a conflict with a black mage. While sitting on an undead, under the eyes of everybody, Zhao swaggered into Montenegro Fortress. Even the guards that were standing in front of the gates did not dare to intercept them. Although they were supposed to guard the fortress, they weren't that big of a force, so naturally they wouldn't dare to touch a black mage. According to Green's directions, the 3 stopped in front of a luxurious hotel. Zhao looked up at the hotel and found a sign that had a Bana symbol. The 3 got off the undead. Green picked up the backpack, while Meg picked up her own bags. Zhao had nothing to hold but a magic staff, which he waved around and returned the undead back into his space. The stewards of the hotel looked outside at the black mage. They didn't want to go out and meet him, but they were also afraid of angering the mage. So one unlucky guy had to bite the bullet and go out. He had a smile on his face as he greeted Zhao. "Welcome, distinguished mage. I'm sure you must have taken a long journey to Montenegro Fortress. In our upscale hotel, we can provide you with hot water 24 hours a day so you can wash away your fatigue." Zhao didn't say anything, he just gave a wave, and Green immediately stood in front of the steward. "2 of your best rooms, have hot water ready, and bring a good meal to our rooms." They were then escorted into the hotel. It was good that he and Green had discussed it beforehand, for Zhao to not speak as much as possible and to make it look like he was ordering Green do all the talking. Not only would this make Zhao seem mystical, but it would also prevent people from finding out Zhao's age from his voice. Chapter 60, Fat Boss. In the continent, under normal circumstances, the strength of a mage was directly proportional to their age. It was different for a warrior. All a young warrior needed to do was to toughen their bones and grow in strength with training under the guidance of adults. Martial arts practice was not easy. The training had high strength requirements, but to become a mage was a lot more difficult. As children, they will be sent to designated locations to check if they have the talent for magic. If there was any, they would focus on training as a mage. If not, they would go back home to try to become a warrior. The age requirement to become a mage was very strict. If you were younger than 12 years old, then you couldn't practice magic. After so many years of research, the people in the continent discovered that if a person was 12 and under, then they didn't have the mental strength to learn magic. It was because one so young would have unstable spiritual power, which might cause them to become brain dead or result in death if they tried to practice magic. It was precisely because of this reason that the age of a powerful mage would oftentimes not be young. Meg, who had already become a 6th level mage, could definitely be considered a genius. Very few people in the continent knew about Meg's strength, which was strictly confidential. Even only a few of the Buddha clan knew about it. That was because Meg was strong for her age. If word got out, it would only result in 2 things. They would either try to control Meg, or try to kill her. These two results were something the Buddha clan didn't want to see. Mages tended to live a lot longer than warriors. A warrior, even an 8th level one, generally could live up to 200 years, but an 8th level mage can reach 250 years of age. Because of this, advanced mages were very important to the continent. They could protect the continent for at least 100 years or so. On Earth, a king of a feudal country, even if it was a long-lived one, could only rule the country for a couple of years. But it wasn't the same here in the Ark continent. On average, the king of an empire would rule for 100 years or so. A short-lived king would be someone who only ruled for a few decades, and it was for this reason that, even after so many years, the continent's development wasn't very fast. They didn't invent new machines and technology, and just stayed as a society that used slaves. It was precisely because of this that Green wouldn't let Zhao speak, especially to a person that would scrutinize other people. As long as he heard someone speak, he could tell their age. The steward led Zhao into the hotel, which was very well decorated. Beyond the door was a hallway about 40 feet long, and from the top hung magic lamps. Even though it was still day, the magic lamps were lit. Facing the entrance was a large bar where two beautiful waitresses and a fat man were standing respectfully. This man was wearing nice silk clothes, and on his chest was pinned with a badge that had the Bana symbol. He seemed to be the boss of this hotel. When the boss saw Zhao come in, he immediately moved towards him and stopped 3 steps in front of Zhao, then greeted him with a bow. "Welcome, Sir Mage. You have brought honor to our hotel with your presence. Please stay here and rest, and we will immediately bring you some tea." Zhao didn't say anything. He turned and walked to the side, then sat down on the sofa that was specifically placed there as a temporary place to rest. The moment he sat down, a waitress came over with a pot of tea and a cup, which she placed down on the coffee table in front of Zhao. He helped himself to it, then gently waved for Meg to stand beside him. With his black robe, the fact that he hadn't spoken, and just made small movements to command Green and Meg, Zhao seemed very impressive. The boss of this hotel had been paying attention to Zhao. Feeling Zhao's peculiar temperament, his eyes couldn't help but shrink, but the smile on his face didn't change as he soon stood in front of Zhao, and bowed. "Dear Mr. Mage, your room has been arranged on the 3rd floor. Please come with me." Zhao nodded and stood up. He went along with the boss to the 3rd floor, which wasn't the same as the 1st or 2nd floors. The 3rd floor had no halls, since there wasn't a need for one when there were so few rooms. The fat boss led them to room 601 and personally opened the door. Zhao and his group went inside, while the boss stood outside the door. "Dear Mr. Mage, if you need anything, all you have to do is ring this bell to summon someone. Your food will be here shortly." This room has 5 bedrooms, enough for you and your followers to live in. "If it's not to your liking, then I can arrange another room for you." Zhao said nothing as he looked around the room, but Green understood what he meant, so he immediately turned to the fat boss. "We are very satisfied with this arrangement." Fat boss immediately bowed. "It is an honor to serve such a great mage. Now please allow me to take my leave." He respectfully closed the door, then left. With the fat boss gone, Zhao let out a breath and took off his hat. "I didn't expect that these clothes would work so well." That boss was really respectful. Green also took off his helmet. "Master, you're too naive." That boss just did it out of habit. He's a professional. "You may not know this, but this hotel is owned by the Marquis clan. That fat boss is one of the Marquis' intelligence agents. I believe that before long, the Marquis clan will know about us." Zhao was surprised. "This place is owned by the Marquis clan, Grandpa Green? Why are we staying here?" Green smiled slightly. "Sometimes, Master, being Loki is not a good thing. Since you can summon an undead, you can actually impersonate a black mage, so they would think we're suspicious if we're not blatantly swaggering around. Plus, this would make everyone doubt that we're from the Buddha clan, because no one thinks that we would have the courage to do this. I really didn't think that we would actually inform the Marquis clan about us in such a place." "Grandpa Green, how did you know that this hotel was owned by the Marquis clan?" "It's not a secret. Outside the hotel is a sign that has a Bana symbol, which is the badge of the Marquis clan. With the strength of their clan, No one in the continent would come here to make trouble. We do not need to worry about anyone when we stay here, Green said. Plus there are a lot of spirit beasts in the mountains, so you could find a lot of useful things here and get them at a very cheap price. So why wouldn't the Marquis open a business here? Zhao nodded. He had learned from that miscellaneous book that a lot of things on the continent were made out of materials that came from spirit beasts, along with their powerful bodies. A lot of spirit beasts had magical properties, which were very useful for alchemists and pharmacists to refine. Those mercenaries and adventurers rely on hunting those spirit beasts to make a living. However, Zhao was still somewhat puzzled, because from looking at the miscellaneous book, he knew that there weren't any adventurer guild organizations, which you would often see in web novels. Grandpa Green, where can the adventurers get a task, or is hunting spirit beasts all they do? Of course not, Green said. In fact, adventurers can receive a task from equipment shops, hotels, and pubs, which gets them from the big cities. Even if the task is not suitable, they could just go somewhere else to look for one. For example, whenever the Marquis Company needed something, they could just share the task with their branches throughout the entire continent, like the one here in Montenegro Fortress. If they administer any tasks, it would be simple to send a message and get it to an adventurer by tomorrow. Chapter 61, Strange Combination. Was it simple? In fact, it wasn't that simple. How could it be so simple to pass messages so quickly throughout the continent? Do not forget, here in the Ark continent, they didn't go through an information age. There were no mobiles, phones or internet like back on Earth. However, the Marquis Company could do this, proving their strength in the Ark continent. Even an entire empire wouldn't be willing to provoke them. Quietly listening to Green, Zhao found that he had really underestimated this world. Although it wasn't technologically advanced, they have developed in a unique way. His understanding of this world was too shallow. Green smiled. Master, no matter where you go, a black mage will be noticed, especially when we appeared in Montenegro Fortress from the mountains. Of course, they would pay attention to something like that. Zhao nodded. Then we leave tomorrow? Yes, we will leave tomorrow, Master. To be honest, if you want to stay a few nights here, then I'm afraid that we really can't afford it. Zhao couldn't help but smile. Money was really a problem. What would an outsider think about when they saw them? It should look like they were spending a big windfall, but all they had was a broken territory, along with 100 people to feed, and not to mention the occasional attacks from the spirit beasts. Even though they had a cheat, they were still so poor that they couldn't afford to stay long at a hotel. Green, thinking that Zhao would feel sad about the current situation, hastened to comfort him. Master, when we sell the radishes, we'll make money. You don't need to be sad. Zhao didn't explain to Green why he had smiled. I'm fine. Later, when we leave this hotel, we should find a place outside the city, and then go rest in the space. Green nodded. Yes, but we still need to stay here today to get the Marquis clan's attention. Zhao nodded too as he looked around the suite. It really wasn't a small lodging, with a living room, 5 bedrooms, and a bathroom. It was very comfortable. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Green quickly stood up and opened it. A waiter was outside, and in his hands was a large tray. There was some bread and 3 plates of delicious dishes. Green took the plates, then gave the waiter a tip and sent him away. Little did he know of what happened after he closed the door. The waiter went downstairs and immediately went to a very secluded room, then knocked on the door. The fat boss's voice from inside, "Come in." The waiter pushed open the door and went in. It was a bedroom with very simple furnishings, just a bed with a small table and a chair. The fat boss was sitting in the chair, holding a pen, ready to write. Even though he heard the sound at the door, he didn't look up. What did you find? The waiter stood respectfully. It may be simple to find out their identities. They are likely from noble birth, but life shouldn't be too good for them right now. I just sent them some ordinary food, but they didn't say anything about it. And naturally they gave me a tip, although it wasn't very much. The waiter had deliberately sent some food that wasn't of the best quality, just to try to find out the identity of Zhao. Based on their reactions, he tried to determine Zhao's status. In the continent, Only the nobility would tip a waiter. Under normal circumstances, even businessmen wouldn't give waiters a tip, so from that point he judged that Zhao may be of nobility. The aristocratic requirements for food and drink were very high, but Zhao didn't make any demands. Plus, they only tipped a few copper coins. The waiter believed that Zhao didn't live very well, but despite knowing all of this, the fat boss really had no way to determine their identity. Finally, the fat boss wrote everything down, and then he opened up a secret door that led to a secret room behind his bedroom. In the secret room was a row of cages, with each cage holding a bird-like spirit beast. This spirit beast was called a wind falcon. It was a fast-flying spirit beast, and after some training, it was usually used as a messenger. The fat boss first fed the wind falcon some meat, then he carefully rolled up the written information into a small bamboo and attached it to the falcon's claws. Then he sent out the falcon to fly. The Marquis clan was so big that they naturally wouldn't care about every little thing of note, but the appearance of this black mage was too sudden, so the fat boss had to message them about it. For people, a black mage represented danger, darkness, and other negative words. As long as there was a black mage somewhere, they would be noted down without trying to offend them. That was why the fat boss was paying attention to Zhao, though he was doing these things earlier than Green expected. But when Zhao posed as a black mage, this effect was what they wanted. With such a high-profile act, naturally, no one would think that they were the Buddha clan, so this will make them more secure. After eating the meal, Zhao and everyone rested. They didn't go wandering around Montenegro Fortress. It must be noted that Zhao was a black mage, and a black mage couldn't just go around shopping, especially since they were trying to avoid trouble. Fortunately, Zhao was an otaku who didn't like to go shopping since it gave him a feeling of discomfort. Plus, he was tired and it felt good to rest in such a nice place. The day passed very calmly, but everyone knew that there was a black mage around. The next morning, they left Montenegro Fortress. Zhao was sitting on Alien, which left those adventurers feeling very envious. From Montenegro, there were 3 roads. The left one led to a grain-producing area of the Persildachi. The terrain there was very flat, suitable for growing wheat, with a large number of slaves working there. The road on the right led to a forest, which was the main source of wood for the Persildachi. Under normal circumstances, very few people travel on these 2 routes, because there was no business to be made there. However, the middle road led to the Persildachi's capital city, known as the Pearl of the North, of the Aksa Empire. It was called Kasa City. They certainly wouldn't go to some grain or wood-producing area. Since they were going to sell radishes, they would naturally head to Kasa City, which was busy with business. The next few days, they were on their way. It wasn't like their 3-day travel through the Black Waste, where they didn't see a single person. Now that they were in the Persildachi, they saw a lot of people as they passed through forests and farmland. But because Zhao's undead looked so mighty, the moment people saw it, they would try to hide. Zhao felt very satisfied. After all, he could finally see some people, so it wasn't a boring journey. Consider this: a huge skeleton with a warrior sitting on its head, and all its body was a black mage, with a sweet beauty sitting next to him. This combination was very strange. Also, whenever they pass by a small town or city, they always find a place outside the city and then go into the space, which made their movements seem uncertain and hard to track. Just another thing that was mysterious about them. Chapter 62, Strange Village. This is a sponsored chapter. Thank you to everyone who supported me. Not only the Marquis clan, but lots of clans had established places to gather intelligence throughout the continent. Big clans would set up an intelligence network in Montenegro Fortress, not to check out military affairs, since not many military events occur here. They established it only for one main purpose: talent. The aristocracy in the Ark continent, after thousands of years, naturally was very aware of the importance of talent. For a noble, a powerful warrior would be a great help to them. So those major clans would send intelligence agents to Montenegro, where mercenaries and adventurers were concentrated. They had to find potential warriors that could become the strengths of those clans. It was precisely because of this that, When Zhao appeared in Montenegro Fortress, a lot of large clans had received messages regarding their arrival. But those people that were tracking Zhao had miscalculated. They did not consider that Zhao would stay out of the towns that he passed, and that he would go into his space and rest at night. So there is no way for those people who were trying to track him find his whereabouts. With such a performance from Zhao, the people were sure that he was a black mage. Zhao was not aware of the people that were following him. He was just going at his own pace, his speed not being too fast. Going to Kosa City from Montenegro, even with a horse, would take 7 days, and Zhao was riding on his undead with a similar speed. Right now it has only been 3 days, and in this period of time they have ran into 2 towns and numerous small villages, which showed that the Persal Duchy was indeed prosperous. On the morning of the 4th day, they were going along like usual. It was not the rainy season yet, so going through the dirt road was very smooth. But Zhao felt that something was a little off, but he didn't know what it was. Seeing Zhao looking puzzled, Meg spoke up. "Ah, master, it's strange. We've been going for more than 2 hours, but he still hasn't seen anyone. At this time of day, there should be a lot of people." It was as Meg said. Zhao finally realized that after 2 hours, they haven't met a single person today. No wonder he felt weird, like something was lacking. "Stop," Zhao said as he felt that something was wrong. The undead immediately stopped. Zhao got up and leaned on its ribs to speak to Green. "Grandpa Green, what has happened? Why didn't we meet any people after so long?" "I've noticed, master, but don't worry. We will move forward. I want to see what happened. It's not a big deal anyway, since master can just go into the space to hide so nobody can find you." Zhao didn't think that Green had already noticed that something was amiss. Even if it's a little irresponsible, going forward to find out what happened was a valid reason. There was nothing they could do but to keep moving. Thinking of this, Zhao nodded. "Well, let's go." Alien immediately started moving at the same pace as before. It really was moving at a leisurely pace. But Zhao and Meg were tense. They didn't have much experience in these situations. Unlike Green, who was calm, they restlessly looked around at the surrounding woods, as if at any time a spirit beast would burst out. To Zhao's surprise, they walked through the whole morning without encountering a single person. Passing through a village, they carefully looked around, but no one was there. And to Zhao's surprise, there are no signs of being attacked. Like all the villagers had simply got out of bed and left. They didn't hear any chickens or even the sound of a dog. Complete silence. Zhao couldn't help but feel a chill going down his back. This village was too strange. Green carefully looked through the village for a long time, yet he didn't find anything. His face was gloomy as he turned to Zhao. "Call out Mren. She might be able to find something." Zhao immediately called out Mren from the space. Mren had been paying attention to the situation outside. Naturally, she knew what was happening, so after she came out, she didn't ask anything and just carefully looked around. She closed her eyes and softly chanted a spell. A mass of blue light left her body. With the same radiance as the sun, the light flashed for a full 5 minutes before slowly disappearing. Mrin slowly opened her eyes. "Master, black magic was used to make some kind of temptation spell. Every living thing in this village was lured away." Zhao was shocked. "Black magic? You mean there was an actual black mage here?" Mrin nodded. "Some time has passed, so the magical energy has almost disappeared. But I can be sure that someone was here using black magic." Zhao's and Green's face fell. They were sure that the reason why they didn't encounter anybody today was related to this thing. They must fix this or they will be implicated. Let's not forget that Zhao's identity was a black mage. But there was an actual black mage using black magic. They couldn't hide from this situation. Just like Hamrin discovered the black magic, other mages would be able to do it too. When news of all the missing people spread out, Zhao might fall under suspicion. Green and Zhao were worried about this black mage. With a temptation spell to lure so many people away, that mage would certainly have nothing good planned, which would bring Zhao no small amount of trouble. Mren apparently thought of this too. "Master, you should stop dressing up as a black mage. Otherwise it would bring you trouble." Zhao shook his head. "If I pretend to be someone else, it may make it easier for people to discover our identity. which would make the situation more dangerous. Grandma Mren, can you sense which direction that black mage brought all those people? Let's see if we can solve this annoying problem. If we can solve it, then that's good. Even if it's not resolved, we still can't let the Purcell clan suspect us. Such a big thing, it would be impossible for the Purcell clan to not find out about it. But Zhao was able to find the real killer and handed the guy over to the Purcell clan. Naturally they would not be suspicious of him. Mren looked at Green, wanting to know if they should go along with Zhao's plan. If Green agrees, she will find the way towards that black mage. Green nodded. Well then, let's do it. According to the young master, find that guy and hand him over to the Purcell clan. Mren used her magic, but this time it took her a whole 10 minutes. After she finished, she pointed in the direction of Casa City. That way, she said. Chapter 63, Immortal Mercenary Group. It was strange. Supposedly every day, there would be people coming from Montenegro to Cosa City, but today there was not one person going in that direction. Up to now, Zhao hadn't met anybody. But Zhao didn't know that early in the morning, there was a caravan that passed by them. But when the caravan found that something was wrong, they immediately retreated back to their small town and spread the news to all the merchants. Now that a lot of people knew what was going on, they decided to form a bigger caravan, so they hired a lot of mercenaries from Montenegro. Zhao didn't know this because he had been feeling tired, so while the caravan had set off bright and early, he had stayed in the space and missed them by 2 or 3 hours. It was because of those merchants who blocked anyone from coming in that direction that no one saw Zhao, which resulted in this strange scene to unfold. There were a lot of thieves and wild beast attacks on the continent, so caravans had to be careful. If they find anything wrong, they would immediately go back into the nearest town, and then warn the other caravans from moving on ahead. Zhao didn't know this, and neither did Green, since the Buddha clan never owned a caravan before. Zhao kept them moving forward, where they encountered 5 more villages with the people gone. These villages were not too big, but if one were to count all the people in the 5 villages together, there would be 1,000 people. But it was not just the people, but all living things were gone. The more they kept moving, the more they felt scared, not only from the missing people, but also from Mren feeling the black magical energy growing stronger and stronger. According to Mren's estimate, with this temptation spell that could cover so many people, the strength of the black mage must have reached at least the 8th level, same as Mren. But even if this black mage's strength was on the same level as her, Mren recognized that if they really fought, she was afraid that she might not really be able to beat the other, because black magic was too strange. However, Zhao didn't worry too much. Not only did he have Green by his side, but he also had the space which he could go hide in. He didn't believe that anyone could go into the space to kill him. Their speed didn't accelerate or slow down, and just unhurriedly moved forward, which was a characteristic of Zhao. No matter at what time, he pursued stability while reminding himself to stay calm. That was his motto. So this time Zhao kept reminding himself to calm down. He always carefully looked around for any situation. Although he couldn't see anything, he still had to be very carefully, and be prepared to deal with any emergency. Mren sat on the undead with her eyes closed, along with Green who was sitting on Alien's head, while Zhao sent Meg back into the space. But to Zhao's surprise, they almost went through a whole day without encountering anything. It was already 4 in the afternoon, and they have yet to see any people, or did they encounter any attack. Everything was calm, which was eerie. Zhao was prepared to stop and rest when Mren suddenly opened her eyes. "Master, you should go back into the space. I have a strong feeling of black magical energy in front of us. It seems like the other party has been prepared." Surprised, Zhao nodded his head. He knew that he wouldn't be much help, so he stepped into the space. However, he left Alien outside, still carrying Green and Mren as it walked. Once inside the space, Zhao immediately went into his hut and watched the screen. It was so strange to watch the outside scene that appeared on the screen, like he was still sitting on the back of the undead. At that moment, Zhao smacked his head. He really was stupid. As always, he could see up to 100 meters from the point he entered the space. But if that point could be moved, Wouldn't he be able to see more things? Previously, when he came into the space, he didn't put away the undead because he thought that it might be necessary to help Green and Mrin, but he forgot to tell it to stop, so the undead kept moving forward. He discovered the secret that even though he himself was inside the space, the image of the screen kept on moving, so that point of entry could be moved. There was no need for him to stay outside. Damn, why didn't he think of it before? He could have just let the undead go outside while he hid inside the space. But right now Zhao wasn't in the mood to keep thinking about it, because he wanted to see the black mage. Mrin and Green was paying attention to everything in front of them, while the undead unhurriedly moved forward. Mrin sensed that the black magical energy was getting stronger. Suddenly, they heard the sound of weapons. Green and Mrin knew that they were finally there. Just then, the undead suddenly stopped. Zhao appeared on the back of the undead from the space and said, "Grandpa Green, Grandma Mrin, get into the space." The undead could still move forward, and we can see everything that's going on. Green and Mrin were surprised, but they understood what Zhao meant. However, Green still shook his head. "No, Master, we shouldn't go in. If they find out the secret of the space, it would do more harm than good." Zhao paused for a moment, and then he nodded. "Well, then it'll be necessary for me to stay out. I can release those undead to help, so people would think that I'm a black mage, and they won't discover the secrets of the space." Green and Mrin frowned. They really didn't want to let Zhao take that risk. But if Zhao went into the space, and then summoned undead, it may expose the secret of the space, which would really put them in a dilemma. Green thought about it, and then turned to Zhao. "Master, if you want to stay outside, you'd better call Meg out to stay by your side." Zhao nodded. He found that, as long as he thought about calling people from the space in his head, the people in the space could hear it. Plus, if those people wanted to speak to him, as long as they knocked on the screen, he could hear them. Finding this out made Zhao happy, because contacting people in the space was now even more convenient. After Meg was called out, she immediately sat down next to Zhao and carefully looked around, ready to protect him. Zhao commanded the undead to move forward, but to be more careful this time. Green stood up, ready to fight. They walked for 1,000 meters before encountering a small slope. Zhao finally saw what was happening in front of them on that slope. A large group of undead was sieging a caravan. Seeing the Bana symbol on its banner, it turned out to be a caravan belonging to the Marquis clan. Green noticed that there was a flag stuck to the ground next to the slope. The flag was black with a white skull painted on it. Zhao thought that it was similar to a pirate's flag back on Earth. When Green saw that flag, his face couldn't help but change, because the flag reminded him of an organization. On the continent, there was a notorious group of mercenaries, the Immortal Mercenary Group. The Immortal Mercenary Group was one of the continent's most powerful mercenary groups, but it was also one of the smallest, since the core of the group only had 8 people. In general, only having 8 people wouldn't be called a mercenary group. It was more like a small adventurer group. But this team of 8 people was called a mercenary group on the continent because these 8 practiced black magic. This mercenary group had existed for decades. In that time, they had received a total of 1,000 requests, of which 500 of them resulted in killing the owner and robbing their goods. Later, no one dared to ask them to do a task, which made the group turn into thieves. Every time they acted, all the nearby people would be killed and then turned into undead, and then they would use those undead to attack their targets. This method could be described as extremely cruel. Nobody on the continent knew how to deal with them. One time, the Immortal Mercenary Group actually moved against the business of the Xenia clan, who sent some experts to fight back. The result was that out of the 8 men from the Immortal Mercenary Group, 7 of them died, and the last one was seriously injured. Originally, everyone in the continent thought that the Immortal Mercenary Group would disappear, but instead they did something crazy. Chapter 64, Releasing Them. This chapter was sponsored by Jason A. Thanks. Just when everyone thought that there would be no more Immortal Mercenary Group, the last black mage of their group used the last of his vitality to multiply his magic power by 10 times. Then turn the other 7 black mages into high-level undead. On his deathbed, He commanded the 7 undead to use their black magic to make him become an undead too. Generally, when a person becomes an undead, they would be a low-level one with low wisdom and strength, but under the power of a powerful black mage, they would retain their fighting strength and high intelligence, plus they would be a free undead, not enslaved with any constraints to anyone. Of course, for a black mage to make a high-level undead, it would require very powerful magic. The most important part was to pay with your own vitality. Even if it was a powerful 8th level black mage, his life would come to an end when making such an attempt, so generally black mages didn't make high undead. That black mage was seriously injured. He was a dying man, so he wasn't afraid of wasting his vitality to stimulate his magic. Once he finished creating those 7 undead black mages, with his dying breath he gave them orders to bring him back as an undead. The plan was too crazy. Those 7 undead black mages were free, so it was hard to say whether they would listen to him or not. Even if his plan succeeded, the 7 might have become high-level undead, but from now henceforth he would just become an average undead that couldn't eat, sleep, or enjoy any of the human pleasures. Was it really worth it? A mercenary group consisting of 8 undead black mages has become the continent's most notorious gang of thieves. Even the large clans were terrified of them. In their opinion, if the people in that mercenary group wanted to become undead, then they were lunatics. It was because of this that nobody wanted to offend the immortal mercenary group. Green had naturally heard of this mercenary group, which was precisely why he made an ugly face when he saw that flag. To be honest, he didn't want to offend the immortal mercenary group. It might bring disastrous consequences to the Buddha clan. The flag that had been inserted into the ground was to tell any passing people that their group was working, so it was best not to make trouble, otherwise they would make an enemy out of the immortal mercenary group. Green turned to Zhao. Master, we have to go back. I have something to tell you. Zhao was looking at the battle, but he nodded at what Green said and pulled the undead back. They quietly withdrew from the slope, and no one on the battlefield noticed them. After stepping down from the hillside, Green pointed to the woods, and Zhao directed the undead that way. In the woods, they found a secluded place, and then everyone went into the space. Once in the space, Green took everyone into the hut and told them what he knew about the immortal mercenary group. Mern already had some understanding of this mercenary group, but Blockhead, Rockhead, and Meg didn't know them at all since they grew up in the capital and have never left it. Zhao calmly listened to Green. He never thought that the immortal mercenary group would be crazy enough to turn all 8 into undead. After Green finished, Zhao stood up and touched his forehead. Then he pounded on the table and murmured, "Let's fight." They all looked puzzled at Zhao, who turned to Green and said, "Grandpa Green, you said that the 8 people of the immortal mercenary group have become undead." Green nodded, which caused Zhao to laugh. "Do you remember what happens after I bring an undead into the space?" Hearing what Zhao said, Green was stunned for a moment, but then his eyes brightened. He also pounded the table. "Yes, they become loyal to us." Mrin also reacted to this news. She certainly understood what Zhao meant. They had brought over 1,000 undead into the space. Without exception, they have all become loyal. The 8 individuals of the immortal mercenary group were also undead, so wasn't it also possible to catch them in the space and make them to loyal too? Mrin couldn't help but feel excited. Although they caught many undead, most of them were animals, with a few that had human form. But those were just low-leveled, so those human undead naturally had no wisdom and couldn't be of much help. But the undead black mages of the immortal mercenary group were different. They were high-leveled undead, with high intelligence that also maintained a lifetime of knowledge. If they could help the Buddha clan, then that would be of great help to them. Right now the Buddha clan lacked a force. If they could reign in the immortal mercenary group, that would be tantamount of having strong armed forces. If anybody wanted to move against the Buddha clan, then they would have a hard fight on their hands. The thought of it made everyone excited. Zhao also couldn't help but smile. "And we can help the Marquis clan, which would put us in good favor with them." Hearing what Zhao said, Green calmed down as he immediately realized that they could also help the Marquis clan. The Marquis Company was one of the most famous firms in the continent. If they could make a strong bond with them, He couldn't imagine the future benefits they could get to develop the Buddha clan. It wasn't just the possibility of getting lots of gold, they might also get access to their complete information network. Master, we have to go now before it's too late. I'm afraid those people of the Marquis clan might not stand for long, Green said. Zhao nodded. Blockhead, Rockhead, you two will stay inside the space to take care of the slaves. Grandpa Green, let's go. The four came out of the space. Outside the space, Zhao immediately released all of his undead. The total amount of undead was 1,357. This number wasn't counted by Zhao himself, but something he got from the spatial barn. With all the undead that Zhao summoned, the scene was vast. A few of the undead were humanoid and some were insects, but most of them were some kind of large-sized undead, like that rat undead. This was simply an undead army. They were supposed to fight the mercenary group, but mostly they were there to look impressive. Zhao sat on his undead, while Meg, Mran, and Green sitting on their own. With a wave from Zhao, the mighty army of undead spirit beasts rushed straight towards the slope. They could see that the mercenary group also had their own undead army, made up of 3,000 people, along with some dogs, chickens, sheep, cows, pigs, and other livestock. It would seem like this undead army was composed of all the living things from those villages. Chapter 65, Laura. This chapter was sponsored by Anonymous. Thanks. This was what the immortal mercenary group usually did. They killed off the villagers and turned them into their undead army to enable them to attack their target. Although they were low-leveled undead, their attacks weren't weak. Even the power of an ordinary undead was not small, plus they weren't afraid to die, nor did they feel pain. No one was willing to encounter such opponents. In the continent, the Marquis clan had a reputation of great strength, so under normal circumstances, no one would dare lay hands on their caravan. So after such a long time, they would naturally become more slack, and now each caravan were sending less people to protect it. This time, the Marquis clan was sending someone to Montenegro Fortress to conduct a secret translation with a mysterious figure. This transaction was for the Necro Orb. The Necro Orb was found by a thief in an ancient tomb. It was an orb with strong necromancer energy, which could turn an ordinary undead into a mid-level or even a high-level one. The Marquis would love to let this treasure stay in their clan, but it became known to the mysterious figure, who was willing to pay a high price to buy this orb. The Marquis clan had no choice but to agree. They decided that Montenegro Fortress would be the place to make the transaction, because it wouldn't attract attention. No one would think that such a treasure would be traded in Montenegro. They didn't know how this news reached that mercenary group. The importance of the Necro Orb to the immortal mercenary group was self-evident. The Marquis clan didn't let others know that they were going to Montenegro Fortress to make the transaction, so they didn't send much of a squad, which disguised themselves as an ordinary caravan. They had released information that the transaction for the orb would be located elsewhere, so they thought that they were safe, until the immortal mercenary group stopped them. Not only did the 8 black mages of the immortal mercenary group command an undead army, they would also occasionally use black magic to attack the Marquis clan caravan, giving them lots of pressure. Of course, the Marquis clan didn't send ordinary mercenaries to guard the Necro Orb. They sent experts. But these experts couldn't handle the attacks from all these undead people, plus the black magical attacks from the mercenary group, making them miserable. Laura was standing on the carriage, her hands holding onto a wooden box. The box wasn't very big, only about 20 cubic centimeters or so, and it seemed to not weigh much, since she effortlessly carried it. Laura Marquis was the second daughter to a mage named Kevin Marquis. At 40 years old, the old mage finally reached the 6th level. His speed of cultivation wasn't slow, but it was definitely not fast. He preferred to study magic, and had little interest in business. The Marquis clan was a famous clan that specialized in business in the continent. They didn't pay much attention to their heirs that practiced magic or martial arts, and instead focused more on those with business capabilities, which was why Kevin was somewhat embarrassing to the clan. However, Kevin had a good daughter named Laura. Laura was only 17 years old, Yet she was a famous genius in the continent. Not only was she a genius in cultivation, but also in business. Laura didn't just learn martial arts, but also how to make weapons for warriors. This was even more difficult than practicing combat skills, which was already demanding for cultivators. Not only was Laura a 6th-level warrior, but she was also good at making spears, tower shields, horse bows, machetes, and other weapons. Her strength was very strong, but you wouldn't be able to tell from looking at her appearance. White snow-like delicate skin, a head of wavy golden hair, and a pair of dark blue eyes. Along with her illustrious family background and powerful strength in the martial arts, she was admired by many men. But what was most talked about her was her business genius. At a very young age, she was already helping her father with some business matters. For such a genius, the average person couldn't even rise up in jealousy, because she was too good. If someone was a little better than you, of course you would be envious of him. But if he was so much better than you that he was beyond your reach, you couldn't afford to raise up your jealousy. In the Marquis clan, the heirs of the family will manage different businesses in different areas. The patriarch of the clan will then see who is the best at managing their business and making it the most profitable. Everyone knew that Kevin didn't have the ability to do business, so the patriarch didn't even consider him as part of the competition. But since Laura helped Kevin manage his business, their earnings have increased each year, and now wasn't worse than the other heirs of the family. Kevin's share of the clan's business was mainly concentrated in the Purcell Duchy, so this time the transaction was placed in the hands of Kevin, and of course it would be Laura who finalized the deal. Laura had no idea how everything they arranged became in vain when that mercenary group arrived, but she feared that this time was really dangerous. Although Laura was a 6th-level warrior, until now, she has never participated in a real battle. Her strength was good, but she was a bit worse than an ordinary mercenary in a fight. Plus, they were surrounded by the undead. Even if she wanted to run, she couldn't. This was Laura's first time feeling so desperate. Death was coming. She bit her lips hard until there was bright red blood, and then her last shred of hope was destroyed when, behind the undead army, another large number of undead appeared. These undead were large, with bodies suffused with a strange green color. Laura's face paled. She knew that she was going to die. However, she didn't collapse, but instead aroused a fighting spirit in her heart. In despair, there would often be two kinds of reactions: either complete collapse where you lose all ability to resist and get trampled on, or a manifestation of anger to oppose everything in your way, even if they were undead. Laura was clearly feeling the latter. Laura was ready to fight to the death, but then she suddenly discovered that the new undead was attacking the undead that had besieged them. Not only Laura, but everyone in the Marquis caravan was shocked to the point where their brains momentarily didn't know how to react. Was there strife among the immortal mercenary group? Laura didn't think so. She was clever and eventually saw that these new undead creatures weren't the same. Unlike the human undead that had besieged them, most of these new undead were more like spirit beasts. And not only did these spirit beasts have strong attacks, but their bodies had green bones, which showed that they were toxic and not to be trifled with. The green undead were coming in a steady stream, with a total number actually reaching more than 1,000. Unfortunately, that was less than half of the undead that had besieged them. But Laura was looking around because she believed that the people who summoned these undead would soon be here to help them. Laura carefully looked at the back and found 4 people riding the undead. 2 of them were standing. One was wearing full body armor, while the other was wearing a magic robe. The other 2 were sitting on an undead like it was natural. One was dressed in a black magic robe, and the other that was sitting beside the black mage was wearing a maid outfit. Suddenly, black light was shot straight towards these 4 people. Laura's face changed. She knew that the mercenary group was attacking these 4, so she couldn't help but shout, "Be careful." However, she didn't realize that she was too far away from those people, so they couldn't hear what she was shouting. Chapter 66, Raid. Just as the black light was about to hit the 4 of them, suddenly a layer of water shielded them. The shield looked thin and transparent, but the black light couldn't get past their guard. After the black light disappeared, Green stood up on the undead's head and suddenly sprang towards the direction where the black light was emitted. Although he was still wearing body armor, with a very fast speed, he disappeared in front of everyone in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, Mrin said to Zhao, "Master, go back." Zhao knew that he must listen to Mrin, so he immediately commanded his undead to step back. More black light shot at them, but Zhao was able to note where they came from. He directed his undead army to rush toward where the black light was being emitted. The 8 black mages seemed to be hiding in the woods. Suddenly, a screen projected in front of him, flashing different colored dots. The red dots represented them and the undead that he summoned. The green dots represented the people of the Marquis caravan, and there were a few black dots hidden in the woods. There were 8 black dots, but one of them was next to a red dot. Zhao looked and saw that was the direction where Green went. One of the black dots was also rushing in that direction, leaving the other 6 black dots behind. Zhao commanded his undead to divide into 7 teams. 6 of the teams will each have 200 undead, which he sent towards the 6 black dots, while the remaining 157 stayed close by. Meg also made her preparations as she softly whispered a spell that formed a pale shroud of air which surrounded her and Zhao. After all, her mission was to protect Zhao. The 6 black dots figured out Zhao's intentions, so they immediately rushed towards him. In their view, getting rid of Zhao was the only hope of victory. If they were to get surrounded by the undead, then sooner or later they will be killed. The immortal mercenary group has faced danger countless times, like when they faced the Xenia clan. At the time, they were 7th-leveled black mages, but the Xenia clan was still able to kill them, forcing them to turn themselves into undead. Now their true strength was only at the 6th level. If it weren't for the fact that black magic was really strange, then it would be impossible for them to run rampant in the continent. But this time, they encountered an even more dangerous situation. Not only did the other side have 2 people with strength at the 8th level, they also had an army of undead. They could say that their chances of winning was very low. That was the reason why they took the initiative to attack Zhao. It wasn't because they thought that they had the ability to kill Zhao, but they wanted to see if they could escape after taking Zhao's life. They had experienced many battles with enemies before, and so they thought that if they ran, it would be likely that Zhao would come after them. So they wanted to try attacking Zhao first, then find a way to escape. But they didn't know that if they had turned around and ran, Zhao wouldn't have come after them because he really didn't want to deal with the hassle. Zhao noticed that the black spots were getting closer. "Grandma Mrin, they're coming." Mrin nodded, although she didn't need Zhao to tell her that. As a powerful 8th-level mage, plus the fact that she was rich in experience with fighting enemies, how could she not know that they were coming? However, Zhao faced a surprise. Although he knew that some of the immortal mercenary group were getting closer, he couldn't even see their shadows. The screen projected in front of him clearly showed black dots outside his protection of undead, but he couldn't see a single person, not even their shadows. It was really strange. Although Zhao was curious as to the reason why, he knew that now was not the time to ask. He had already warned Mrin, plus he knew where the people were, so he wasn't worried. The black dots creeped closer, and now they were inside his protection of undead, but the undead didn't notice anything. Seeing this, Zhao then understood that those people must be using some kind of secret stealth magic, so now the undead couldn't even find them. But Zhao didn't shoot up in fear. He believed in Mrin. If she couldn't find them, then she wouldn't be called an 8th-level mage. Plus, Zhao's undead still had a trick he could use. His undead were an undead spirit variation. It had a spiritual attack, which was something that mages feared to encounter. Zhao firmly stared at his screen, ready to get involved at any time. Right now he looked mysterious because he was dressed as a black mage, plus he was able to sit there motionless amidst such a battle. Mrin had long felt the people getting closer, but she didn't move. She wasn't worried about Zhao's safety because he had Meg by his side, and if Meg failed to protect him, he could always go inside the space. She had nothing to worry about. At this point, Zhao discovered that the black spots have stopped 10 meters away from him. He felt that it was time, so he got up and yelled, "Attack!" to command his undead. He didn't actually need to shout, but he had always wanted to give that command, plus he was encouraging himself. From his outburst, Mrin began casting a spell, while Zhao suddenly felt his undead blasting out a strong spiritual force. Mrin was surprised, but she then understood what Zhao was doing, so she changed her spell. She was originally going to use a magic attack to wound those guys and then capture them in the space, but now she allowed Alien to do the attacking because she was very clear on what a spiritual attack will do to a mage. Although she didn't know how Zhao found where those people were, she didn't think too much of it as she immediately casted another spell. 6 water dragons appeared at her side, which then rushed straight towards those 6 men. At the time when Mren just formed the water dragons, the 6 men appeared around Zhao in a semicircle less than 10 meters from him. Apparently, they were going to use magic to attack, but then suddenly they were hit with a spiritual attack, injuring them. As soon as they were exposed, the 6 water dragons wrapped around them. Once Zhao opened a hole to the space, Mrin immediately threw the 6 men inside. Zhao and Mrin felt relieved. The timing of their attack was perfect. Before those people were about to cast their magic, they were suddenly hit with a spiritual attack, allowing Mrin to seize the opportunity to trap those people and throw them into the space. The key factor was the screen projection. Even if those people were invisible, they couldn't stay hidden under Zhao's eyes. Along with the spiritual attack, it had doubled their war potential. Chapter 67, Undead Level Up. This chapter was sponsored by fans from around the world: Chris HN, Denmark; Pongthep C, Thailand; David F, US; and Po Yen P, Australia. Thanks. Almost all of Laura's men had injuries. These men were loyal to Laura, not the Marquis clan. Since she was young, Laura understood that the men given to her by the clan weren't reliable, so over the years she had been trying to cultivate her own forces. Because of the stakes of this time's transaction, she had to take her most loyal men, but they had almost died. After Zhao threw some of the immortal mercenary group into the space, he heard the voice: "Advanced class robotic objects have been discovered in the space. Proceeding with new implantation program. Implantation successful. Robotic objects have no toxic effects. Will now strengthen them with toxins. Running extraction program on these new class of advanced robotic objects. The original class of robotic objects will now be strengthened." Zhao understood what the voice meant. He really succeeded. Once the 6 undead of the immortal mercenary group entered the space, they had really become one of us. Plus, they were also strengthened with the toxins from the swamp, giving them a stronger attacking power. Not only that, when the space found that the 6 undead were more advanced than the others, it leveled up all the undead that he had. Zhao had not yet had the time to feel pleased when a blue shadow shot towards him and shouted, "Master!" It was Green, who was clutching 2 black figures. It appeared that they were the remaining members of the immortal mercenary group. With a thought, Zhao opened up a hole, then Green threw the 2 members into the space. The voice sounded again, telling him that the reform process was happening again. Just then, all the undead around Zhao flashed a tiny light. The light was so small and fast that if Zhao was not sitting on his undead, he might not have noticed it. After the light disappeared, Zhao found that the undead had changed. Their bodies were a more deeper green and the red soul fire where their eyes were supposed to be looked more exuberant. The body of his undead became dark green. The only place where it was different was the white pattern on its head. The pattern was shaped similar to an eye. It was a complex pattern which if you stared at it for a long time, you would feel that it was spinning, sucking in your soul. In addition, his undead seemed to have become bigger. It was originally just 10 meters long, but now it reached a total of 15 meters. But that wasn't the only change. The chest of the undead had turned into a closed space when green crystal formed walls between the ribs, leaving no trace of a gap. The space inside the chest was now 2 meters high, 4 meters long, and 3 meters wide, with a flat floor and an arc-shaped roof. Not only could you sit inside the chest, you could also stand up and move around. On the neck of the undead appeared some sort of strange bone armor. It didn't affect the undead as it could still turn its neck to look around, but this bone armor had formed something like a corridor that gave direct access to the undead's mouth from its chest. The mouth was very big. As long as the mouth was open, It could form a space that was 3 meters wide, 5 meters long, and 1 meter high, allowing a person to sit there and see the situation outside. Down the back of the undead grew a lot of hideous bone spurs that seemed to glitter with flashing green light, and on its tail grew 3 long spikes that pointed up, left, and right. Just the sight of them showed how powerful and lethal they were. Zhao and Meg looked at the changes of the undead, not knowing how it had become like this or when the wooden planks had been knocked to the ground. It didn't just become a roomy way to travel, but also a murderous weapon. Mren and Green were surprised. The changes to the undead were completely beyond their imagination. Zhao took a moment to collect himself, then with a thought, he immediately put the rest of the undead inside his space. Then he called out to Mren and Green, "Grandma Mren, Grandpa Green, let's go into the undead's mouth." The undead had 2 entrances. The front entrance was the mouth, while the other was behind the chest. Zhao noticed that there were a few pieces of bones which you could open, allowing you to go into alien from behind. However, Zhao didn't want to go inside from the back, because that was the place where animals defecated. He didn't want to go in or out from there. Green and Mren went inside the undead with Zhao, which immediately opened its mouth to let them in. The chest seemed to be tightly sealed, only feeling a little wind. Once inside, Green and Mren couldn't help but feel surprised. They really didn't expect that the space inside the chest would become like this. Didn't it change too much? They looked at Zhao, who chuckled. "I didn't think that it would become like this after I put those guys from the Immortal Mercenary group into the space." The space made all the undead stronger, which is why it had become like this. "Now we don't need to sit outside. We can just sit in here and see the outside situation instead." Green nodded as he looked around. "Although it's not much, you can still see outside." "Well, Master, it would be great if we go see the Marquis clan like this." Zhao smiled. "Then let's go see them." He commanded his undead to climb the slope. Laura and everyone else didn't see what happened behind the slope. The last thing they saw was a blue shadow clutching 2 black humanoid objects going behind the slope. Then all the undead that helped them have disappeared. Laura was just about to send people to see what had happened when a crocodile skeleton crawled out from behind the slope. That crocodile skeleton seemed very familiar, like the one that the black mage was sitting on, but it had changed, looking more ferocious. While she didn't get a good look at that undead's appearance, she clearly remembered that it didn't have bone spurs that big going down its back. However, Laura was sure that it was an undead that belonged to the black mage that helped them. That was because she had never seen the Immortal Mercenary group using such an undead. If they had that undead, they would have used it to siege them from the beginning. Laura and her men felt nervous. After all, that undead was too scary. Its dark green bones shined with a coldness under the sun, while its 4-meter-long mouth exposed rows of fangs. And although its legs weren't high, it had long sharp claws that left no doubt to the destruction it could bring. Such a monster was coming towards them. Laura and her men tightly clutched their weapons, their hearts rising up to their throats. Under their gaze, the undead stopped itself 5 meters away from them. When its mouth opened, they felt a burst of fear. But then Green stepped out of the undead's mouth. Chapter 68, Idle. Green looked around and spotted Laura. "Hello, Marquis clan. My master would like to speak with you." He called Zhao his master like how a mage's follower respectfully would. Laura of course understood what Green meant, but she hesitated. She had a treasure with her, and if the other side wanted that treasure, wouldn't it be too dangerous if she went along with Green? Green was a good person. One look at Laura and he understood her hesitation, but he didn't blame her for it. While Laura wasn't prepared to follow Green to see Zhao, since the other side had saved them, she still needed to give them her thanks. Laura jumped down from her carriage, then she walked to Green and bowed. "Powerful warrior, please accept the thanks of Laura Marquis. I do not know if I could have the opportunity to see the distinguished mage." Although Laura was very polite, the meaning of her words were clear. "If you want to see me, then you will have to come out and see me." Green looked at Laura, then nodded. He also thought that they should go out to Laura's side. Although they didn't know why the Immortal Mercenary group attacked her, this was a good chance to establish a relationship with Laura and the Buddha clan. Inside the undead's chest, Zhao, Mren, and Meg were standing there waiting for Green. Zhao originally wanted to go out to see Laura, but Green thought that it would be too demeaning, so he told Zhao to wait here until he came back. Once Green was inside again, he said, "Master, the one outside is named Laura, a genius of the Marquis clan. When you go meet her, if she asked about the immortal mercenary group, say that we repelled them. Don't say that we made them loyal to us." Zhao nodded. "Don't worry, Grandpa Green, I know what to say." He went out, followed by Green and Meg, leaving Mrin behind. Standing there, Laura was a bit nervous. She didn't know how the mage would answer her since she knew that what she was doing was rude, but she couldn't risk the treasure that was on her. However, she also knew that black mages were usually cantankerous and that she might have offended him. If the black mage wanted to deal with her, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to leave here today. This thought filled Laura with some regret. With her current strength, she wouldn't be able to hold on to the necro orb if the black mage wanted it. While she was feeling regretful, Laura suddenly noticed 3 people coming out of the mouth of the undead. One of them was a black mage. Although the mage's body wasn't very tall, he was wearing a tall black robe while holding a magic staff. Laura, with her experience in business, could tell at a glance that the robe and magic staff were cheap and poor quality. But from the mage's temperament, Laura almost completely omitted these 2 things. His unique temperament seemed to be very humble, but at the same time, it seemed very contradictory. Meanwhile, Laura also noticed another detail. Although the black mage was wearing a robe that covered his whole body, she could still see his hand that was sticking out while holding the magic staff. When she saw this hand, Laura's eyes couldn't help but shrink. The hand wasn't old and it had no wrinkles. Although it was a man's hand, the skin was very white and delicate. If this hand reflected this mage's age, then Laura could easily tell that the owner of this hand didn't exceed 30 years old. An advanced black mage that was no more than 30 years old. What kind of concept was that? This was equal to the strongest in the continent and would infinitely have a bright future. For a large clan, such a person would help that clan grow. But Laura has been taking care of the family business for several years. So even after seeing such a big scene, it only took a moment before she could calm herself back to normal. Different from Laura, Zhao felt very excited. The reason he was excited was because of Laura's looks. Although Laura was pretty, in his past life Zhao had seen a variety of beauties. That wasn't the reason for Zhao's excitement, but rather because Laura looked like a specific person. In his past life, when Zhao was an otaku, he liked music. He mostly listened to some Chinese songs, so he knew even less about foreign singers. But he did know of one name, Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift was a country music singer. When Zhao was almost 20 years old, at the time when Taylor was 20, he thought that she looked sweet and her singing was very appealing. So he quickly fell in love with her. Zhao had a picture of Taylor on his computer desktop. Laura's looks was almost like it was carved out of a mold from what Taylor looked like. She looked so much alike that Zhao kept checking her over. Everything from her height to her blonde hair. She was simply almost exactly the same. The only difference was that Laura had a body that practiced martial arts. But this gave her an inexplicable attraction. As long as men saw her, they would want to conquer her. Meeting his idol standing before his own eyes, how could Zhao not be excited? Although he knew that the person in front of him wasn't Taylor, he still couldn't help but feel excited. Fortunately, he was wearing a mage robe that blocked his face. If Laura were to see the happy vacant look on Zhao, it would greatly damage her impression of him. Laura took a deep breath and gave a deep bow to Zhao. "Dear mage, thank you for your help. Please accept my most sincere gratitude." Zhao soon recovered after he also took a breath to calm down. In front of a star like that, he shouldn't be too crazy, and be more sensible. Plus, he knew that the one standing in front of him wasn't Taylor, but Laura. "Miss Laura is too polite. We just happened to pass by and encountered that notorious mercenary group. Unfortunately, we couldn't destroy them, and instead let them run," Zhao said. Laura was surprised for a moment. She had seen Green carrying 2 objects to the back of the slope, but she didn't expect that they were part of the immortal mercenary group. If so, Then it was good that the mercenary group had been eliminated, and Laura was also able to confirm her previous speculation that the black mage was quite young, which she could tell from the sound of his voice. Laura smiled at Zhao. You do not need to feel any regret. I will not allow the immortal mercenary group to run rampant for so long in the continent. This time they will really be sorry. Since you helped us against those people, you might fear that it would just bring you more trouble, but please don't worry. After I go back to my clan, they will send out a team to eradicate the immortal mercenary group, so please rest assured. Zhao slightly chuckled. Miss Laura is too kind. A mere mercenary group is not much in my eyes, so you don't have to worry about it. Hearing what Zhao said, Laura couldn't help but nod her head. If anyone else was to say this, she wouldn't believe it, but since Zhao said so, she believed him. She had seen how powerful Zhao was. Not only did he have an 8th level warrior, but he could also call out all those undead. Green was looking at the sky, then he turned to Zhao. Master, it's getting late. Shouldn't we hurry up? Zhao knew what Green meant, that they should go. This time they just wanted to meet the Marquis clan. They didn't want people to think that they were threatening the Marquis clan for repayment. Seeing Zhao about to leave, Laura at once said, Dear mage, we are preparing to make camp here today. If you don't mind, please stay with us. I would like to invite you for dinner to express my gratitude. Zhao shook his head. Miss Laura is determined, but I'm sure we will have the opportunity to see each other again in the future. Having said that, he turned around and walked towards his undead. Laura anxiously took 2 brisk steps forward and quickly pulled on Zhao's robe. Dear mage, please wait. When she grabbed onto Zhao, Laura didn't know whether or not it was an illusion, but she could smell a fresh scent from Zhao's body, like a prairie during spring, making people feel refreshed and vibrant. Chapter 69, Their Plans. This chapter was sponsored by Almeda, Saudi Arabia. Thanks. It was a very strange feeling. Laura never thought that just a smell would make her think of so many things. The odor coming from Zhao's body smelled like the sea, letting her feel her spirits being lifted. Laura froze for a moment, but Zhao turned to look at Laura's beautiful face. Miss Laura, what are you doing? Laura recovered, then blushed and quickly let go of Zhao's clothes. I'm sorry, dear mage. May I ask for your name? Of course, my name is Zhao. Zhao used his name from his past life. If he said that he was Adam Buddha, he was afraid that they would be hunted down. He wasn't an idiot. Laura took out a gold medal and handed it to Zhao. Mr. Zhao, this will show that you are a gold VIP. Show this piece of gold to any of our marquee company in the continent, and you will be given a 20% discount. Also, if you want to sell anything in the Persal Duchy, as long as you are holding this, the marquee company will pay the full purchase price to buy one of your goods. I know that this simply isn't enough to repay you for your kindness, but on behalf of my peace of mind, please accept it. Laura was bowing while holding the gold medal high above her head. Zhao wanted this gold medal. With it, what he does in the future will be more convenient. He could see that this time, Laura must be doing something important, otherwise she wouldn't be so anxious to get to Montenegro Fortress. Even though she had suffered heavy losses, she still didn't want to go back and would rather stay here to camp, then leave tomorrow. But Zhao didn't dwell on it. He just took the gold medal and said, Thank you, miss. Having carefully looked at the piece of gold, he could see that the gold medal was palm-sized, made entirely out of pure gold, and the shape of it was like a blooming banana, and at the center was the word, Marquis. After Zhao took the gold medal, Laura straightened her body and let out a breath. She had been really afraid that Zhao wouldn't accept the medal. Laura didn't give the gold medal to Zhao entirely out of thanks, but the main reason was to form a relationship between her and Zhao. He was an advanced black mage, and one so young, plus he was flanked by Green, an advanced warrior. If she could form a relationship with Zhao, then that could only be a good thing. In the Ark continent, strength was respected. If Laura could become friends with Zhao the advanced black mage, then it would be a great influence to her position in her clan. So when she saw that Zhao accepted the gold medal, she felt relieved. As long as Zhao used the gold medal, she would be able to find him, and then slowly form a closer relationship. After looking at the gold medal, Zhao tucked it in his sleeve so it couldn't be seen when he threw it into the space. Once he had the gold medal, Zhao said, "Miss Laura, I'm sure that you have a lot of things to do. I will not hold you up, but we will have the opportunity to see each other later." Having turned away, Laura didn't stop him this time, but she said to Zhao's back, "If Mr. Zhao wants to look for me, just casually mention my name in one of the Marquis family shops, and you can send me a message." Zhao didn't turn around, and just gently waved as he climbed into the undead's mouth. Once Meg and Green followed behind Zhao into the undead's body, the undead then quickly left the battlefield. Laura watched as the undead walked away. Once it was gone, she couldn't help but let loose a breath. Then a 15-year-old girl, who was wearing a maid outfit, came to Laura's side while holding a box which contained an orb filled with dead souls. The girl walked around Laura and said, "Miss, will we really have to camp here?" Laura looked at the bodies and bones on the battlefield. Her eyes flashed with coldness. "Of course, we will rest here for the night. Tomorrow morning, we will be on our way to Montenegro Fortress as soon as possible. Send someone to keep a lookout on the back of the slope." A warrior saluted, then turned and ran to the back of the slope. Laura turned to the girl dressed as a maid and said, "Near, are you scared?" Near was pale, but she shook her head. However, Laura still saw the distressed look on Near's face. She touched her head and said, "Do not worry, Near. You don't have to be afraid. I will not let such a thing happen to you." Although Near was Laura's maid, the two grew up together. Because of this, Laura always felt that Near was like a sister, so she comforted her. However, Laura was very clear that this time they really had something to fear. Because of the stakes of this transaction, only a few core members of the clan knew about it, but somehow the immortal mercenary group had been waiting days in advance to ambush them, so they apparently knew about their plans. The immortal mercenary group weren't prophets, they could only rely on guesses for their robberies, so someone must have told them about the plan. While Laura still didn't know for sure who that person was, she could at least determine a range of people. In fact, Laura understood that some in her own clan looked forward to her death. Her father was the second heir to the clan, but he didn't care much about the family business. However, since she took over the business, her father's position as the second heir became more stable, which brought a lot of pressure to several other heirs. In a large clan, what was the most brutal? Undoubtedly, competition between family members was the most brutal. Laura, although she was still young, slowly understood this truth ever since she took over the family business, but she didn't think that the people in the clan would do things that were so absolute. At this moment, Laura knew that in the future, no matter what, she couldn't rely on the clan. That was one of the reasons why Laura had tried to win over Zhao. If later, the clan was really unreliable, then with Zhao's support as a powerful mage, Laura could go out and live on her own without fear of family reprisals. Zhao didn't know the full meaning of what Laura was doing because he didn't know what the immortal mercenary group was trying to grab, but he shall know soon. After Zhao and everyone quickly left the battlefield, they gathered around Green in the room of the undead's body. Zhao took out the gold medal and handed it to Green. "Grandpa Green, look at this gold medal. With this, will our plans not be more successful?" Green carefully looked at the gold. "Ah, yes. With this gold medal, plus with Laura's kindness, it will be a great help to our future development." In the Marquis clan, Laura is the second daughter. She has taken over the family business in the Persal Duchy, so this is very beneficial for us. Zhao frowned. "Will anyone suspect us?" Green shook his head. "They should not, Master, as long as we quickly sell the radishes and return to the Black Waste. There, you can let the immortal mercenary group go into the carrion swamp and reign in the undead. And also release the undead that you already have, because if the undead from the carrion swamp look like they are wandering around the Black Waste, I think that no one would easily go into our territory, making us more secure." Zhao nodded his head. With a thought, the immortal mercenary group of 8 men appeared in front of him. Fortunately, the room in the undead's body wasn't small, otherwise it wouldn't be able to fit so many people. The 8 men were wearing similar styles to Zhao's dark robe, but they didn't have a magic staff in their hands. When they came out, in a ceremony fashion, the 8 people immediately said in unison to Zhao, Master. Zhao nodded and said, "Hat." The 8 men took off their hats, and 8 skulls appeared. They were dark green crystal skulls with red fire as the soul in their eyes. Some people would think of the crystal as beautiful, while others might see them as strange. "Why did you attack Laura?" Zhao asked. "The wisdom of these 8 have apparently not been affected." One immediately replied, "Master, we got the news from a person in the Marquis clan that Laura had the Necro Orb, which can enhance the undead." "Which person from the Marquis clan told you this news?" Zhao asked. Just then, Green suddenly asked, "Master, are you saying that they can speak?" Chapter 70. Mysterious Forces. This chapter was sponsored by Anonymous. Thanks. Zhao was shocked when Green asked such a question. They've already said several words, but Green still asked if whether these 8 guys could speak. That was too weird, right? Didn't Green hear them speak? Zhao turned around and looked at Green. "Grandpa Green, we've already said several words to each other. Didn't you hear us?" Green and everyone else shook their heads, which confirmed that although Zhao had a dialogue with these undead people from the mercenary group, Green really didn't hear them. Seeing Zhao puzzled, Mrin said, "There are few undead that know how to speak, but these are high-level undead, so they can directly talk to the young master through spiritual power." The young master thinks that he could hear them talking with his ears, but in fact, they're not making a sound. When he heard Mrin's explanation, Zhao nodded, then turned around and spoke to the undead black mages. "Since you have called me master, you will no longer use your previous names. I will give you new names." "Which one of you was the boss?" One of the undead stepped forward. "Master, I am." "Well, starting today your name is Drunk. The second will be called Hammer, and the next ones will be Mountain, Edge, Punch, Rash, Scales, and Brick." The 8 people accepted it in unison. Although they didn't have that much wisdom or influence, the space has let them know that Zhao was their master, so they certainly did not refute Zhao's words. "Now answer my question. Who told you that Laura has this Necro Orb?" Zhao demanded. Drunk quickly said, "Master, we heard this message from one of the members of the Marquis clan. At first, we didn't believe it, but if what he said was true, then we wanted to get it to enhance our strength." Zhao nodded. It was like he thought, just a struggle within the clan, nothing remarkable. He then turned to Drunk and said, "Since you call me master, tell me, where are all those good things you robbed over the years?" "Master, although we've been robbing for so many years, we're rarely able to keep the things that we steal. We just took them to the previous master." Drunk immediately said. Zhao's face changed. "Previous master? Master, you are mistaken," Drunk quickly said. "Now we don't recognize others as our master. It's just that we grew up with our previous master that adopted us. After we learned magic from him, he sent us out as the immortal mercenary group to collect money to help him, until now." After listening to Drunk, Zhao didn't feel relieved, but instead his mood got heavier. "What is the identity of your previous master?" Drunk shook his head. "We don't know, we rarely see him. His servant takes care of us. Even if we see him, he would be wearing a dark robe that covered up his whole body." Zhao felt more heavy, discovering that the forces behind Drunk and the rest was not so simple. Cultivating these men into 7th-level mages from a young age would require a lot of manpower and financial resources. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that although it was hard to find someone with a talent for magic out of 1,000,000 people in the continent, it was even more difficult to find someone who was suitable for practicing black magic. And yet the forces behind them were able to find 8 individuals that were talented in black magic. How much power would it take to choose them and train them up? Another point, Drunk and the rest grew up together, but it was clear that they didn't live with their previous masters, so while their previous master was living elsewhere, did he also train more of them? If so, then this was an even bigger matter. Green saw that Zhao didn't look so good, so he quickly asked, "Master, what's the matter?" Zhao looked at everyone and explained his conversation with Drunk, as well as the speculations he had made. Everyone's faces grew heavy. Zhao then tried asking Drunk personal things about the previous master that adopted them, but Drunk didn't know anything. They just knew that when they grew up, they would go out as a mercenary group to earn money, then put that money in a designated place. They would rarely meet. The others simply did not contact them, so they didn't know what the situation was. Finding out nothing, Zhao retracted drunk and the rest back into the space. After all, although the room inside the undead's body was big enough for so many people, it was still very crowded. Green didn't say anything, but no one had a good look on their face. They really found that this time they shouldn't mess with forces that were so big. No one knew how strong was their influence or what their intentions were, but it was certain that these forces weren't so simple. After a moment, Green said, "Master, we don't have to worry too much. No one will think that we have the immortal mercenary group. The Black Waste is a forgotten part of the continent. After we go back there, you can immediately put Drunk and the others in the carrion swamp so no one can even find them. We should not have any trouble." Zhao nodded, hoping that things would be so. Now, they were too weak. They would be dead if those forces behind Drunk really discovered that Zhao had the immortal mercenary group, not to mention if the news got out. They would also have to deal with those old nobles from the Ixa Empire. Zhao didn't know what to say about this matter, so he put it off for another time. Then he turned to Green and asked, "Grandpa Green, when we get to Kosa City, shouldn't we plan ahead and find a place to hold the radishes?" Green nodded. "Yes, Master. Do not worry. There are many places near Kosa City. We can buy a small estate so you can hold your radishes and sell them to the people from the Marquis clan." "That's good. But although we did have a preliminary deal with them, now that we have this gold medal, we should get a higher price, right?" Zhao asked. "Yes, this gold medal can really be a large help to us. If we took this gold medal to do business with them, I don't know how they will react, especially Miss Laura." "Master, you're a very powerful black mage, yet you're suddenly selling vegetables." Green laughed. "I think she will be very surprised." Everyone, including Zhao, laughed. Now Zhao had a more firm commitment to their farming. Although they had good strength, with 2 people at the 8th level and so many undead, he still couldn't forget that their enemies were even more powerful. Those old nobles of the Ixa Empire, if they knew of the strength that the Buddha clan had, they would unite in fear and use the power of the entire empire to destroy them. Plus now Zhao shouldn't provoke the forces behind Drunk and the rest of the undead black mages. If those forces found out about their situation, then Zhao would be finished. So they could only be low-key. But Zhao didn't mind using the piece of gold that Laura gave him. Even if he used it, his identity would only be known as a black mage named Zhao. If someone wanted to trace his origins, they would discover that he came from Montenegro Fortress, and nothing else. Montenegro Fortress was a mess. Even if someone were to search harder, they would still not suspect the Buddha clan. After all, Adam drank the water of nothingness, which everyone in the continent knew about, and now he had these undead providing the best cover for his identity. No one thought that someone who drank the water of nothingness will be able to summon these undead creatures. So even if someone wanted to check up on him, they would never take notice of the Buddha clan. After experiencing a battle, Zhao better understood the truth that strength was supreme in the Ark continent. If he didn't have the strength, would Laura be so kind to him and give him the gold medal? If he didn't have the strength, could he have defeated the 8 undead black mages? If they didn't have the strength, even if they were to earn money, sooner or later it would just be snatched from them. Chapter 71, Indifference and Passion. They moved forward. This time when they encountered villages, there were still people, which made Zhao feel relieved. But seeing the villagers, Zhao had mixed feelings. To be honest, the 6th level black mages, although very strong, were nothing in the eyes of those with real strength, like against Mrin or Green. In Mrin's eyes, those ordinary commoners were like ants, and she was a god that was free to kill them. Zhao knew that if it weren't for the existence of the space, he would be no different than those commoners in the eyes of the strong. He was like an ant. He wanted to become strong, but unfortunately he drank the water of nothingness, so he couldn't learn magic or martial arts. The only remaining thing he could rely on was the space. But Zhao understood that living an easy life was not easy. Just because you try to avoid trouble, doesn't mean that it won't come to you. If you want to have a stable life, then you have to ensure that you have the power to keep your life stable. Strength, This was the first time since he was born that Zhao felt such a strong desire for power. Unfortunately, he didn't have a way to enhance his own strength. The space was amazing, but it lacked offensive power. Although he was able to rein in some undead to use for his own purposes, he couldn't go into the carrion swamp to collect the undead. That was no different than courting death. Zhao still clearly remembered that day he stood on the castle walls, shocked by the overwhelming number of undead spirit beasts that came out of the swamp. If you don't have the power to protect yourself, then how can you live peacefully? There's only one answer. Look for a place to hide where people can't find you. The Black Waste was a good choice. Because of the ground, it was a place that no one paid attention to. But there was a problem that left the Buddha clan in a mess. Others may not pay attention to them, but those old nobles definitely would. If they wanted people to not pay attention to them, then they would have to think of a way. Otherwise they would make life difficult for Zhao and the Buddha clan. But the only way Zhao could think of was by improving the level of his spatial farm a little faster. As long as his space's level goes over 10, he would be able to open a ranch. Once he gathers a variety of plants in his farm, he could enhance the level of his space and open a ranch. Then it wouldn't be long before he could put animals from the Ark continent into the space. If that is so, once he reins in some spirit beasts, then this will add to his power. In fact, back in the Black Waste, Zhao had tried to gather spirit beasts inside his space, but without success. It was clear that the space couldn't store spirit beasts for now. He would have to wait until after he opens the ranch. Levels. If you play a game with a low level, you'll just get bullied everywhere. Just you wait until I get a high enough level. While thinking of these things, his undead was moving towards the city. Along the way, they passed by towns, but Zhao didn't go into those towns because they just needed a secluded spot outside of it, then hide in the space overnight. However, recently Zhao let Green go into those towns to get a better understanding of what they knew. The Immortal Mercenary Group was such a big thing that it was impossible for people not to have heard of it. The result was contrary to Zhao's expectations. He thought that it would be a very serious matter. After all, a lot of villagers have died. But he didn't think that this kind of news would turn out to be so common. When the Persal Duchy heard of what the Immortal Mercenary Group did, they just took the land that the villages were on, then sent slaves to plow it. Listening to Green's words, Zhao felt a little faint. For the first time he understood how much power the nobility in the continent had. The life and death of those commoners didn't even reach the eyes of those nobles. Maybe they even wanted those commoners dead at some point, so they could increase their area of land. Zhao gave a helpless smile. He still hadn't fully adapted to the thoughts and ideas in this world. Perhaps in the eyes of those nobles, commoners and slaves weren't people, but in the eyes of Zhao, even a slave was a person. However, although the way the Persal clan dealt with those commoners who were killed by the undead mercenary group was very cold, the way they dealt with the attack on the Marquis caravan was with passion. When they heard that members of the Marquis clan were attacked, the Grand Duke himself personally came by to give his condolences. Also, there was another thing that Zhao had heard. Zhao's identity as an advanced black mage had emerged, and was now spreading everywhere. Such a person was very dangerous, so the Persal clan was paying attention to Zhao. Of course, these were just rumors that Green had heard from merchants and mercenaries, but there's no smoke without fire, so it may be true. It was just as they expected. When an advanced black mage suddenly appears in the Persal Duchy, of course the Persal clan would pay attention to them. This was the result that Zhao wanted to see. When the Persal clan notices them, it might give them a lot of trouble, but in general, this was a good thing. If they focused their attentions at Zhao's identity as a black mage, it would make his Atom identity more secure. These days, Zhao had found that there were mercenaries and adventurers always around them. He was aware that they were there for surveillance. They didn't show themselves much on the road, but at night, they would monitor them when Zhao entered the space while leaving his undead to stay outside. Zhao didn't know that the people who were monitoring them were envious to death. In the continent, although there were a lot of black mages, the necromancers who could summon undead were rare. Even if they could summon undead, it would just be skeletons or zombies, the lowest level of undead. And this didn't mention the fact that they certainly couldn't ride a skeleton. The best they could do was have a few skeletons carry them in a palanquin. Although a necromancer could summon the lowest level of undead, this was obviously completely different to the skeletal undead that Zhao summoned. The dark green color, the hideous bone spurs, and its traveling speed showed off its power to the point that the people who were monitoring Zhao felt scared. They really wanted to know what spirit beast Zhao had to kill to make this undead. Necromancers could generally be divided into two types. One of them could directly summon an undead from the ectopic surface. But this type of summoning is by chance, meaning that if you wanted to summon a skeleton, you might suddenly get a zombie. You don't know what you're going to get at that level. For example, if you want to summon a skeleton to fight, then you might just call out a gray skeletal bust. This kind of thing, not to mention having no feet, it couldn't even fight. It is of the lowest level, just like weeds. No attack power and no value to its existence other than nutrients for other undead. However, summoning undead is what is most commonly used by necromancers. That is because this type of magic is less demanding. Even a low-level necromancer can use it many times. Of course, the higher the level the mage is, the stronger the magic, and so they would be able to summon dark creatures of a higher level as well. Chapter 72, Landscape. However, this method of summoning undead had one very fatal flaw: time. If you summoned the undead from the ectopic surface, there would be a time limit in which its presence could stay on the Ark continent. This time limit depended on the level of the necromancer and the level of the dark creature that was summoned. Theoretically, with strong enough magic, you would be able to summon a high-level undead and keep it on the Ark continent for a long time, but most of the time limits were short. There was an exception. If you summon a powerful dark creature, as long as you were willing to pay some vitality, then you could keep that creature on the Ark continent for a longer period of time. But generally, necromancers didn't want to use such a method to summon high-level undead from the ectopic surface. That was because the higher the level of the creature, the more vitality was needed. If you wanted it to stay on the Ark continent long-term, then you were just being reckless. The other method that necromancers could use was the same one that the immortal mercenary group used: creating your own undead. As long as the mage killed the person or spirit beast, he could turn it into an undead. However, this wasn't really suitable because turning anything into an undead would reduce its level by a lot. It was precisely because of this that those who were monitoring Zhao were surprised. If that undead was summoned from the ectopic surface, then it should have gone back by now. Looking at the combat ability of Alien, they could only judge that it had great strength. So if this undead was artificially created, then how high was its level before it got killed? They were all confused. A mage, under normal circumstances, could only produce low-level undead. If they wanted to make advanced undead, then they would have to pay the cost of their vitality. If that black mage was able to make such an advanced green undead, then why was he still alive? The Ark continent was big, but there weren't many places that could produce undead. In fact, there were only two notoriously fierce places in the entire continent that could generate their own undead: Carrion Swamp and Deep Magic. These places were two of the 5 forbidden areas. In the past century, no one has ever made it out alive from those two places, and in the last 1,000 years, those who did make it out alive died within the next 5 years. For this reason, the Carrion Swamp and Deep Magic became off-limits. No adventurers went there, because no one wanted to die. This was also the reason why Zhao blatantly left his undead outside. He had appeared in Montenegro Fortress, and someone could connect that together with the Carrion Swamp. So Zhao would be known as the Black Mage crazy enough to go into the swamp, which would not tie him to Adam's identity. The next day, Zhao's advancing speed wasn't very fast. It could even be said that he was slow, but Zhao deliberately did this. If they wanted cooperation with the Marquis Company, then they would certainly have to work with someone that they could trust, and the most appropriate person was Laura. However, she had not yet come back from Montenegro Fortress, so Zhao would get to Casa City before her. But it wasn't a big deal. They didn't worry about it and just slowly moved forward. While they were moving slowly, Green had already gone ahead to Casa City. Right now, the person who was riding on the undead's head while wearing Green's full body armor was one of the slaves. Green had gone to Casa City to buy a small estate and do some preparatory work, with all eyes focused on Zhao. When Green did these things, it didn't attract anyone's attention. Of course, even without Green, Zhao wasn't lost since a map was drawn for him, which included the terrain and other roads. His understanding of this world was too little, but he wanted to know more about the surroundings around his home. However, right now he had to focus on his lack of security. With Green not here, Zhao had to be more careful. He was afraid that someone would be tempted to attack them, since now they only had Mrin to fight, so their fighting strength had been cut down by nearly half. But in fact, Zhao was just thinking too much. With his identity as a black mage that no one dared to doubt, no one would even try to tease him, especially when they saw that undead. It could only be said that Zhao underestimated the deterrent that black mages have against ordinary mercenaries and adventurers. They would rather offend a powerful warrior than a black mage. If you offended a warrior, then he would just kill you. But if you offended a black mage, you would most likely be tortured to death, then become an undead that would fight for them forever. Adventurers and mercenaries weren't afraid of death, but they would rather have their bodies eaten by spirit beasts than to become an undead. For this reason, they didn't want to risk offending a black mage, especially one that could summon something with that much strength. Although Zhao wasn't moving very fast, he still attracted the attention of the entire Persildachi. Whether they encountered a caravan on the road or an ordinary pedestrian, they attracted a lot of attention, even if for no other reason than the rumors about their fight with the Immortal Mercenary Group. The Immortal Mercenary Group was very famous, to the point where no one dared to offend their existence, and now they had heard that Zhao went to battle against the Immortal Mercenary Group, yet weren't killed by them. This aroused a lot of people's attention. No one thought that Zhao had actually seized the whole group. In their opinion, it was impossible for the Immortal Mercenary Group to be defeated. They had come out unharmed many times from many battles. Even when they fought against the Xenia clan, and were almost destroyed, they still came out of it with hardly any losses in power. So even if Zhao was strong in combat, no one believed that he could catch up to the undead mercenary group's strength. Now everyone was paying attention to Zhao to see when the Immortal Mercenary Group would retaliate. But everyone was significantly let down. Zhao was just going on his way peacefully, with the Immortal Mercenary Group seemingly absent. Zhao didn't face any trouble, which was so unlike the style of the Immortal Mercenary Group. So under the eyes of everyone in the Principality of Persil, Zhao was leisurely heading to Cosa City without any rush, almost becoming part of the landscape. They were all confused, but to achieve his goals, Zhao had to keep all eyes on him, and for no one to pay attention to the Buddha clan. Also, he didn't want anyone to pay attention to the fact that outside Casa City, in a small manor on a small mountain, 100 gold coins was being exchanged. This small manor was originally built by a businessman, on a remote hill in the mountains outside of Casa City. It was a barren hill, unable to grow anything. The only thing commendable about it was that the estate was built around a spa. Obviously, the businessman wanted to build this small estate as a hot spring where you could take a vacation. But unfortunately, he later went bankrupt because the estate was too remote. No one was willing to buy it. When Green found out about this, he immediately put down 100 gold coins to buy it. Chapter 73, Outside Casa City. The reason Green chose this small mountain was because, firstly, it was cheaper here. It was only 100 gold coins to buy the manor and the hill it was on. Secondly, it was close to Casa City. Even with an ordinary carriage, it would take just 2 days to get to the city. A round trip of 4 days to deliver the radishes and back was entirely feasible. And third, it was very remote. Under normal circumstances, no one would notice them. In the hills near Cosa City, almost every estate had some kind of aristocratic manor that acted as a holiday resort. It was one of several sources of income for those estates. Buying an estate for this reason was very normal, so no one would pay attention to them. After Green bought the manor, He immediately went into Casa City to try to find out information. He wanted to know what kind of attitude the Purcell clan had towards the sudden appearance of the Black Mage. More importantly, he wanted to find out the prices in the city. Right now their money was running out, leaving them with less than 50 gold coins, and if they wanted to sell their radishes, they had to wait until Laura came back. 50 gold coins, although it was a lot for ordinary commoners, for them it was too little. Everything costs a lot in a big city like Casa. He feared that 50 gold coins won't support them for long. Zhao had been moving slowly on the road. What should have taken 7 days had taken them a full 10 days to get to Casa City. When he finally made it, he didn't go directly into Casa City, and decided to spend the night outside of it. That was because it was already dark when they got there. Others believed that Zhao was staying outside the city because it was dark, but in fact he was waiting for Green to come back and tell him what he had arranged and what was the situation in Casa City. At midnight, Green dove into the undead, followed by a hole opening up, allowing Green to enter the space. Outsiders simply didn't notice this. The space did not belong in their category of magic. Without feeling any magic fluctuations, the ones that were monitoring Zhao didn't discover anything. Once Green came to see them, Zhao immediately greeted him, then asked, "Grandpa Green, how is it?" Green smiled. "Rest assured, Master, the arrangements have been made. I bought a small estate outside the city. We can stay there until Laura comes back, then we could make a deal with her." Zhao was relieved. "That's good. Once we settle in the estate, I also want to go look around Casa City." "Yes, we should go see Casa City." Green nodded. "These days, I found that the Purcell clan seemed very attached to our clan, but now that the Black Mage has sprung up, they're now directing their attention at us, so we should make an appearance." Green sounded like he was making a contradiction, but Mran and everyone else understood what he meant. They weren't afraid that the people would check out the identity of the Black Mage that had suddenly appeared. They were afraid of those that would find out their identity as the Buddha clan. So Green wanted Zhao, the Black Mage, to make an appearance in front of these people to get their attention. Zhao nodded. "Good. I want to see the way they treat me, but there's one thing I'm worried about, the man behind Drunk and the other undead Black Mages. It has been 10 days since I put Drunk and the rest inside my space, so it's been that long since they have not made contact with that organization. Do you think that organization will doubt our identity?" "That's not very likely," Green said. "We don't need to be afraid of them. Instead, it might be better this way if they came to us. As long as they come, we can find some clues about them." "So much the better," Zhao said. "Tomorrow, we will go to the estate where we will settle. Then we will go to Casa City." Green nodded, but there was a pained look on his face. "Master, even if we go into Casa City, we still can't buy anything. Right now we only have 50 gold coins. This amount of money is really not enough for us to use." They really couldn't do anything with 50 gold coins. He feared that they couldn't even buy the most ordinary oil press, let alone anything else. Fortunately, Green had already bought a lot of food and supplies before, so within this short time, they would at least not go hungry. Zhao shook his head. "We don't have to buy anything. We can just go look around the city. Plus we have to let those people know that we are coming." Green laughed. "Well, when we get to the city, I want to see how those people will react when they take a look at us." Zhao smiled, but he didn't say anything. He knew that recently Green had felt stuck when the Buddha clan was nearly destroyed. In order to keep Adam's life, he had to bow to those big nobles, which was clearly out of line with Green's character. Then he became overwhelmed by the pressure of the daily life in the Black Waste. But it wasn't the same now. Although they had another identity, now that they could go out into the world and take action, it gave birth to a new feeling in Green. With their current status, they weren't affected by whether the people welcomed them or not. At least in this capacity, they could now walk outside and not be afraid of those old nobles who were against them. A person who had never seen the light, but then one day he was finally able to see the light. It was useless to try to describe this feeling with words. Green, of course, knew that even though their true identity was the Buddha clan, he also knew that they had to put on a performance. After all, to not be suspected, Sometimes you had to act high profile to make a good cover. Acting high profile, Green was naturally looking forward to it. But Mrin was frowning. Master, if we act too high profiled, would this affect us in the future? Once we sold the radishes and bought some machines, we would then go back to the Black Waste. So when we go back, wouldn't the eyes of those guys be on us? Green smiled slightly. Do not worry about such things yet. When we get to Montenegro Fortress, we can go into the woods and hide there inside the space for a few days. So even if they turn all those mountains over, they will not find us. Then Master could get drunk to lead the undead into the Black Waste to cause trouble. I don't believe that those who are afraid of the undead will be able to find our castle. This will ensure that there will be no problem. Mrin and Zhao felt that this way was good. Right now Zhao had a lot of undead, but they didn't have a lot of intelligence. After all, it really wasn't like Zhao could talk with them. The undead just listened to his commands. They were just like robots. Whatever Zhao ordered them to do, they would do it. But they couldn't speak. Drunk and the undead black mages were different. Not only were they humanoid undead, they were also advanced undead. They had almost the same intelligence as when they were alive. They could easily communicate with Zhao, so he can make them lead the undead into the Black Waste, so outsiders wouldn't be able to easily enter. People in the continent may not be necessarily afraid of the Black Waste, but they were definitely afraid of the carrion swamp. And now there will be a lot of undead spirit beasts from that swamp running around, so no one would dare touch the Black Waste. Of course, if anyone really did want to go see the castle, Zhao didn't mind letting Drunk and the rest of the undead black mages, with each being at the 6th level, take care of them. Their strength, along with more than 1,000 undead, was more than enough. Chapter 74, Firefish. Zhao was standing barefoot while looking around at all the lush mountains. His heart couldn't help but burst with a smile. When he first heard that Green bought a small mountain, plus a manor, for only 100 gold coins, he thought it was strange. It was too cheap, right? But when he arrived at the mountain, he understood why it was so cheap. Really, it should have been cheaper. The small mountain had no specialty other than stone. Everywhere you looked, you could see blue stones with weeds growing between the crevices. This was not a great estate. The whole mountain gave the impression of a guy who was wearing a hat so small that it revealed half of his scalp, which only had a few strands of hair. It looked extremely awkward. Green, who was standing beside Zhao, naturally saw Zhao's face, and he couldn't help but feel embarrassed. He already knew that this mountain was horrendous, but there was no way they could buy any land close to Casa City with a high price. With the money they had, only this mountain was suitable for them. Green knew that Zhao wasn't satisfied, so he quickly said, "Master, this mountain may not seem like much, but it does have a small manor with a hot spring." Zhao saw that Green was afraid that he wouldn't like the mountain and manor, so he said, "It's nothing much, but it's still a good place." Green nodded. To be honest, he didn't really think about it much when he bought this place, other than it was cheap and not too far away from Kosa City. If Zhao thought it was fine, then he wouldn't worry about it. Mrin and Meg was also standing beside Zhao, and although they didn't mention it, they were both dissatisfied with the mountain when they saw it. Zhao didn't care, and instead went back into the room of the undead's body, then directed it to walk up the hill. He really wanted to see the inside of the estate. There was a stone road, about 5 meters wide, that went from the bottom of the hill to the top. The road was clearly not paved with stone blocks, but with natural stones found on this small mountain. Still, when Zhao looked at the road, he thought it was strange. In his past life, although he had never lived on a mountain, he was very clear on the fact that the roads that led carts up the mountain would generally be winding roads. The so-called winding road would go up the mountain at a gradual angle, by circling upwards. Although this would make the road longer, it created a slope that was conducive in allowing vehicles to move up the mountain. But the road that Zhao was on went straight to the top of the hill. Inevitably, this created a steep road. If it was in his past life, this would hobble carriages, making it difficult for horses to pull anything as it climbed. However, Zhao didn't say anything, because he also discovered that there were traces of carriages going up this road, indicating that this route had been used. He also knew that he couldn't judge the Ark continent based on what he learned on Earth, so he didn't say anything as he directed his undead to walk up the hill. Soon they came in front of the estate. Its 3-meter-high blue stone wall seemed very strong, with some moss growing here and there, while a lot of paint had chipped off its tall wooden doors. It appeared that it had been a long time since someone took care of the place. Zhao and everyone else got out from the undead and went up to the wooden door. The door was 2 meters tall and nearly 5 meters wide, with paint falling off, revealing the original color of the wood. Green stepped forward and forced open the doors, giving off a shrill, squeaking sound. When the door opened, Zhao's eyes brightened. They got a good view of a yard that wasn't any smaller than their castle square. In this yard was a row of 4 houses made out of wood and stone, with 2-meter-wide doors, 1-meter-wide windows, and flat roofs. It seemed like these 4 houses were used as living rooms and reception areas for outsiders. These houses were a bit worn, with many places that were cracked. However, if you wanted to live somewhere that could avoid strong winds, then this place was possible. Zhao looked at these houses and was satisfied. The manor might not look good, but what did it matter? Almost all of the buildings were built with blue stones as the main material. It was very strong. Although this place hasn't been well taken care of, despite the wind and rain over the years, it didn't suffer any great damage. Everyone went into the houses and found that the rooms were empty. There was no furniture, so the rooms could be considered fairly spacious. Simply tidy it up, and a person could live here without a problem. Through this row of houses, they discovered a large patio-style courtyard. In the middle of it was a tree with leaves that were similar to ginkgo, though Zhao didn't actually know what species this tree was. There was also a small ditch where water was flowing. Zhao was surprised when, from time to time, he could see a few small fish, patios, trees, water, and fish, arranged in a very nice way in this courtyard, almost like Chinese-style buildings from ancient times. It could soothe the mind of any trace of anger. Zhao nodded with satisfaction, then he turned and asked, "Grandpa Green, this environment is really good, but the water isn't so deep and it must be cold in the winter, so why didn't these small fish freeze to death?" Not waiting for Green to speak, Mran and smiled and said, "Master, I think that this must be hot spring water. The water temperature is never low, and you might not recognize that these small fish are called firefish. They're tropical fish with thermal properties. Strange to say, these fish must have been chosen for their properties related to fire and that they can only survive in warm water. If the water temperature was too low, they would freeze to death. This fish is a rare delicacy. They taste delicious, with smooth and delicate meat. I heard that even the king would use these fish to entertain foreign guests. It is fine cuisine." Zhao was surprised. He really didn't think that there would be such a fish. He crouched down and reached into the ditch, and sure enough the water was warm, even a little hot. The temperature never seemed to be below 30 degrees Celsius. Not only were these fish able to survive in these temperatures, they were able to live comfortably. He watched as the fish swam around in a relaxed manner, then he tried to grab one. But he didn't think that the fish would be able to turn so flexibly in the water, fleeing away from Zhao's clutches. When Zhao didn't catch a fish, he stood up. "Well, it seems like in the future we will be able to raise some fish. While I release a few undead on the hill to keep us alert, let's also let the slaves out. They haven't breathed fresh air for so many days." Green smiled. "Yes, letting them come out is good. Maybe they could work on the blue stones in this mountain. I have read that these stones are very hard, a good material to make stone tools." "Master, what about using it to make that millstone? Wouldn't it be a good opportunity to make it now?" Zhao nodded, then laughed and said, "Grandpa Green, it seems that this time we really picked up a treasure. There is a hot spring, firefish that we can raise, stones to make what we need, and soon we will make a lot of money." Chapter 75, Level Up. Mark quietly lurked through the woods. The woods were very tall, mostly only having shrubs, but it was because of these shrubs that the grass here was able to grow long and dense. which was suitable for him to hide himself in. Mark Purcell was a specially trained killer. His training methods weren't the same as a warrior's. It was mostly based on a number of lightweights, disguises, sneaking, and assassination. It was an alternative type of training that major clans would give to a few members who weren't afraid of death. This time the task that the clan gave him was simple. He had to monitor Stony Mountain, because there were some rumors of a black mage named Zhao. This small mountain seemed to have been bought by him, and his clan wanted to know what Zhao was going to do with it. Mark made it halfway up the mountain when he saw a chaotic situation among the rocks. Although he didn't see what was happening inside the manor, the outside of the estate couldn't escape his eyes. There was a layer of black fog enveloping the manor. He was very clear on the fact that this wasn't the usual mist that formed around Stony Mountain, but something that could only be made by a black mage. In addition to the darkness, he could see many undead wandering around the mountain. Their large size, dark green color, and eyes that flashed with red fire. Even though Mark was a highly trained killer, his heart felt scared. It was because of these undead that Mark didn't dare get closer to the manor. He was very good at stealth and assassination, but he feared these undead because they might determine his location without even seeing him. Everyone in the continent knew that the undead desired fresh flesh. No matter how you tried to hide yourself, as long as you were a living creature, you couldn't fool the undead. Mark wanted to know what those people were doing on this mountain, but unfortunately, he couldn't see anything and could only lie there waiting. Since Zhao couldn't use black magic, he certainly didn't create that black fog. That spell was casted by Drunk. It was just an added effect to make people more sure that Zhao was a black mage. Right now, what Zhao eventually named Bluestone Hills Estate, was very busy. The slaves, now free from the space, were busy cleaning up the manor, putting in the furniture, and making a variety of tools. This place wasn't the same as Iron Mountain, which barely had any trees and was difficult to find stones that they could mine. Because that mountain had already been hollowed out by dwarves, if they mine randomly, it might collapse. Stony Mountain was different. The mountain was full of blue stones that they could use, plus the other mountains around them had forests. If it wasn't another person's private domain, then they were free to cut down those trees. So now they could rest assured because of this and had plenty of materials to make tools. However, Zhao didn't immediately send anyone to go around the mountains to cut down trees. In any case, it wasn't like those trees could run away. Now he just made his undead gather stones and then ship them back to the manor, allowing Anne and the slaves to use them. This way, they were able to make several discs for the millstones. However, Zhao thought that it wasn't enough. They had a lot of corn, and just a few discs wasn't much. Plus they also had to make a variety of tools. As for the outsiders, Zhao knew that when they arrived at Stony Mountain, there would be people keeping an eye on them, but he didn't care. He had already become accustomed to it. Imran had suggested to cover the manor in a blanket of darkness. Do not forget, Zhao's identity was supposed to be a black mage, who were usually secretive and mysterious. The estate wasn't that big. It only took half a day for 100 people to finish cleaning it. Once they were done, Zhao chose a room for himself in the manor. The original owner, Henry, could be considered very intelligent. He had built the manor so that hot water would flow into the rooms, creating spa pools. There was one in the bedroom that Zhao chose. The only source of water in Stony Mountain came from the hot springs. When the owner built the manor, he took the time to plan it. The water would be divided so they could use it in several different ways. One was for bathing, the other was for drinking, and the last was for the fish. It could be said that although the manor's appearance didn't look very good, the inside was very well built, apparently designed by a famous expert. Since everyone in the manor was busy, Zhao didn't have the time to properly soak in the spa. He had to wait until the evening. After dinner, Zhao returned to his room and took his black robe off. Then he got into the spa. Out of the entire estate, his room, which was the biggest room, had the largest spa, which was about 10 square meters. The other rooms only had spa pools that were 2 meters long and 1 meter wide. But this manor was built very well. Every bedroom had a spa, which was very extraordinary, and the drainage system was good too. After washing yourself in a bath, You just simply pulled the cork and the water would drain away. It wasn't just convenient, but also hygienic. Zhao was sitting in his spa, releasing a sigh at how comfortable he was. He didn't know how long it has been since he took a bath. In the black waste, because of limited conditions, he could only clean himself by wiping his body. There was no way to comfortably take a bath, but now he finally had the chance. Gently paddling his fingers, Zhao softly said, "Ah, it feels nice to bathe in a hot spring after a long day. I wonder what will happen if I put this water in the space. I should take a look at the quality of the water." His hand made a move and a space hole appeared next to him. A surge of hot spring water then flowed into the hole, which then closed. Fortunately, today the slaves were sleeping outside the space, otherwise Zhao would have woken them up. Once the hot water was in the space, the voice immediately rang out. High-grade hot spring water contains a variety of beneficial minerals. Extracting useful minerals. Spatial water has been upgraded. Your level has risen to 6. The space has reached the necessary requirements. Increasing size for hot springs. You will be rewarded with a bag of broccoli seeds, enough to plant 2 acres. Zhao froze for a moment. He knew that there would be a reaction when he put the hot spring water into the space, just like last time with the underground lake water from Iron Mountain, but he didn't think that it would be this good. Did the voice mention a hot spring? What did that mean? Zhao couldn't wait. With a thought, while naked, he stepped into the space. Zhao discovered that the space was different. Not only was there the spatial water spring in front of his hut, in addition to that was another spring where steam was coming out. It looked like the temperature was definitely not low. It was a good thing that no one else was in the space because Zhao was in his bare buttocks when he quickly ran to the hot springs. The spa looked promising, but he didn't dare to touch it. With the steaming hot water, he feared that the temperature may be very high, maybe even 80 degrees Celsius. A high temperature of 80 degrees could boil eggs. So Zhao naturally didn't put his hand into the water. If he wanted to soak in a hot spring, he could just go back to his room spa. Taking one last look around the space, he saw that nothing else had changed. The oil fruits were growing well, and the corn were also looking good. He might be able to harvest them tomorrow. Zhao stepped outside the space and back into his spa pool. Lying there quietly, he calculated with his hands. Right now he had about 240,000 kati of radishes. His oil fruits were growing in their 11th batch, and he had around 495,000 kati of corn, which had just gone through their 26th batch. Also, 2 days ago he stopped growing corn for a while and started planting wheat, cabbages, and eggplants. Now he had 32,000 kati of wheat, 20,000 kati of eggplants, and 20,000 kati of cabbages. Plus his space had 600 gold coins, and he had just gotten a bag of broccoli seeds. The remaining seeds were just